Welcome back to the WatchTower Film Podcast, the film review podcast on the Towercast Network. We still got one more part before you give the woos, but by CINEPHILES for CINEPHILES.
Woo! Wow!
Love it.
I love it. I dig it. Not that one.
Oh.
I think we're all right. We're back. We wrapped up our request month last month.
Yep.
And felt really good about it. We had a lot of people. If you didn't tune into the last episode with Mr. Grizz.
The King Grizz.
King Grizzard and the Wizard Lizard.
Yeah. We talk about one of his favorite films, Death Proof. And that was a great episode, man. I went back and listened to it, and it's fun. It was really fun. And fun in a good way.
In a good way, yeah.
It was great.
Right
We really do get into some great conversations with other people.
Conversations
keep doing that.
And interesting arguments.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Interesting theories.
Of course.
For a second, Michael got scared there that something was going to happen.
I mean, it's a spooky film about women beating up old men.
Right?
That's all I
That
learned.
was a good point. That's spooky to you?
Yeah.
So it really was a horror film for you.
It was terrifying. They were so confident, you know.
We're back.
We are
We're
back.
launching into a new series this month.
But not uncommon to the podcast.
Definitely not. I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, it's new, but like we're coming back into our.
Yeah, we're coming back into our previous Oscar winners.
There we go.
Woo!
We kind of started this tradition, I think, last year, if not maybe 2 years ago.
No, 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? Where Oscars are in a month, right? And Oscars are Sunday, March 3rd.
And the controversy has
On
already
ABC.
started.
So the second or third?
Second.
On ABC.
Second. March 2nd on ABC or any Disney affiliate, really.
Yeah.
And there's some great films out there this year that we didn't. We thought it was kind of a weak year, and we're starting to realize that it's really not.
Yeah.
I'm still missing a couple
I
films,
mean-
but so far, kind of weak.
Yeah, and it's
It's-
going to be exciting to talk about.
Yeah.
But leading
Yeah. Oh,
up
yeah.
to kind of that season and episode, we're gonna have our quote unquote, I'll call it infamous. Our infamous 3+ hour episode on talking about all the Best Picture nominees
You
and what
have
we
to
think about each of these in the short kind of 20-minute sectionals. And we love that. We love being able to come together and say, like, we watched all 10 of these. This is what
11.
we think about them. 11. There's
year.
11 this year?
This year's 11.
Dear God.
What? No, there isn't. There's 10.
there isn't.
There's always 10.
No, it's 10.
Why is it
There's
10?
11.
10.
Why is
don't
it this
think
time
so.
special?
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I thought when I counted our list, it was 11.
Look, we know.
Nothing,
We're
we
just,
need to teach you how to count.
We're just entertaining.
That's what I think.
Well,
Yeah, but anyways, the Best Picture nominee. So leading up to that kind of big, grandiose episode that we love to do every year, and what comes along with it, right? We also do our Oscars recap immediately after that. We thought, well, we're filmmakers of sorts,
of sorts.
Certain levels.
and we like to go back and see which previous Oscar winners we enjoyed.
Yeah.
In our respective kind of areas, as far as directing and acting and cinematography and editing and stuff like that. So, and we also have kind of a big Oscar snub episode coming up. That's going to be really cool to talk about. So all of that coming up this month, between this month and next month.
Yeah, it's basically our warm-up episode into the Oscars.
Yeah.
The warm-up.
Episodes.
Episodes to get you back in the buzz,
Yeah.
get you back in the rhythms. We're going to be diving into our previous Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Just so that way we can kind of,
That's what
warm
today
the
is.
waters. Yeah.
And I'll say that this is the last thing before I introduce my fellow co-hosts and the film. I know cinephiles that I respect a lot, that I constantly, around this season, I'm constantly like, well, have you seen this or have you seen that? Or are you getting ready for the Oscars? Various times tell me I can't remember the last time I watched the Oscars. And these are cinephiles I respect. These are mentors of mine. Who are like, yeah, and if we really get into that conversation, it's obviously the whole political stance.
Yeah, I was
and
about to say.
what it means and whether it matters or not, and what are awards that saying anyways, or they're awards that are ringing truer. There was a point in time recently where a lot of people were leaning on the Golden Globes a little more than the Oscars, or paying attention to the Critics' Choice Awards, or the
Which is,
the National Board of Review or SAG, or DGA, BAFTA. Yeah, so they were kind of, we're gonna. Not as political. We're going to go to these awards because they're not as political. Or like ASC awards for cinematographers and editors. It's a little more like that organization votes for that. So it feels a little more streamlined, right?
Right.
Or at least like faithful to that specific field of cinema. So I've had these conversations, and I understand, and they're not
sure.
wrong
For
to
sure.
an extent, right? But I want to preserve that. I want to preserve the history of the Oscars and what they once meant if they don't mean that now. I think whether we like it or not, whether there's cinephiles or filmmakers out there that constantly are like, it's the Oscars, this and that, it's still the highest, award a filmmaker wants to get.
Oh yeah.
It's still the dream. It's still this. It still represents something special. It still represents the highest caliber of cinema, or at least American cinema. Because it is an American award show. But so I want to protect that legacy a little bit still. And
Well, we gotta admit, man, this year's nominees are not as strong as last year's nominees.
I thought I thought that.
No.
But we started watching at least one of what we thought was going to be the weaker ones, and then ended up shocking me beyond.
Which one? Just to give
like
a little snippet.
Nickel Boys was
Yeah.
something that we thought was
Nickel
like
Boys
this
was
kind of
super interesting.
throwaway one, and like
The POV one?
It had substantially a lot to say and a lot of cinematic merit. And you would think, I thought the same thing. I saw the first 10 minutes, and I'm like, here we fucking go. It's another POV gimmick. And no, they knew how to use that. They knew how to use that very well.
I just feel like last year, most of the films I was like, I can't wait to see this.
Oh, yeah,
and most
but-
of these are like, I haven't heard that one. Oh,
Yeah.
But I also feel like even like building into this year,
Yeah.
I was kind of out of place. Like I felt like, man, I really don't know which films are going to be talked about. I don't know
Exactly.
what's coming out. I don't know what has come out. So I also enjoy the time to kind of recap everything and see
Yeah,
like
that's the awesome part.
what we did miss. And I mean, that's how I felt about last year. Like last year,
Yeah.
Anatomy of a Fall, I didn't hear a whole lot about it till the Oscars was coming up. And then at the very end, I just fell in love with that movie. And
I'll tell you this, and we'll talk more about this in our Oscar episode, but I think that has a lot to do with most, if not all of these films. I won't say all because it's definitely not all.
Yeah.
Streaming.
Ooh,
They get
that's
lost
a
in
big-
the streaming. Where you had a theatrical release,
Yeah.
it was a show. It was BAFTA nominated, Golden Globe nominated, Golden Globe winner leading up to the Oscar nominations, and then now it's kind of like literally, because like I've said in previous episodes, we treat the Oscars prep like March Madness. We have a board. Which ones have you seen? Which ones are we going to go watch this weekend? And like
That's our March
planning leading up
Madness
to
right
it.
there.
And quite literally half of them are on streaming or VOD, and the other half are in theaters.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
And the ones that are in theaters are the ones that we kind of like, all right, like this is getting a little more respect. And sometimes it used to be the opposite. It used to be the kind of indie darlings that were in theaters people were forgetting about. They were kind of like, they would play for a week or so, and then people would forget about them. There's an interesting mix now because, for instance, one of the screenwriting and acting nominees, A Real Pain, I don't even think it premiered in cinemas. And
That one
I caught it on Hulu, I think.
yeah. It's been promoted.
It's streaming, but it's kind of getting lost in the
Proverbial
streaming,
sauce.
the proverbial sauce of streaming. So I think that'll be an argument that we can kind of get into when we get into our 3-hour episode.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good.
But I do think that's contributing to us being like, what's even out? Like,
Yeah,
what are
fact
these?
that like even this
agree.
year, what is it? Emilia Perez,
Yeah.
has the most nominations, and I really didn't hear about it up until like the nominations came out because that one was specifically on Netflix, and I know it was having like limited theater release.
That is true.
I don't even know that it got a theater release.
It got a small theater release, but it's that thing. It's the weird kind of like now that studios know that their film can be eligible for Oscars and they can campaign for it, but it can just go straight into streaming. It's this weird kind of like, let's see.
Great segue.
Yeah.
You know what film was responsible for doing that? Exactly that?
Finding Nemo 2.
Finding Nemo
Close.
2. Alfonso Cuaron's 2018 masterpiece, Roma. Roma was the first film made specifically for Netflix that won an Academy Award.
Oh, so they did start
It's
it.
the first streaming film
And
to
that it's
win an
possible.
Oscar.
There's a chance.
And before Roma, there was rules that you couldn't, not just in the Academy, but in film festivals. For instance, Cannes was against Roma being premiered there because it was made for streaming. So it premiered at Venice Film Festival.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's dumb.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, look, I'm not the biggest fan of making films just for streaming, but Cuaron is onto something
it's
here.
changed. It's not like VOD straight to video. It's now
This film is a prime example of both the making of and distribution using the highest caliber, the state, quite literally, don't take this phrase for granted, or don't take it, with a grain of salt. Take it for what this phrase is: state of the art equipment to make the film that is digital, and state of the art distribution, which is where cinema is right now, and streaming. Right? Cuaron said, "I'm not gonna fucking do that. I love traditional cinema." But we all know where cinema is going to live, at least until we don't know what's going to happen with theaters. So what he said was, I'm going to take the leap. I want Netflix to fund this thing. I'm going to go into the streaming, and I'm going to have total control of making this personal film that I want for a really low budget.
yeah, but like you said, there's thousands of films in Netflix, and there's only 10 at the theater.
And even then, you almost have to. I don't know how it works. This is one aspect of like streaming and film that I really don't know how it works. I'm assuming it's driven by views, but how do you campaign for your film within streaming?
What do you mean?
Yeah, how do
Same
you
thing.
go tell the distributor, hey, this film's getting buzz or has this person starring in it, and then they're going to put it on number 1 on Netflix this week? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They won't do that if it's not one of their films, obviously.
Oh, have I seen
You know what
that?
I'm saying? They'll put Disney released at number 8 on Netflix this week or whatever.
You think they're being-
I'm certain there's some type of campaigning just to be on these top 10 lists in the streaming apps. And again, I think that ends up getting into these weird politics where films like A Real Pain can get buried.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a good example.
And again, it's not like that's new. That's cinema. That's even like these darlings that we've loved over the past 10, 20, 30 years. If you don't have the money to campaign for it, you probably won't get a nod. And if you do, you're probably not going to win, as people don't know what your fucking film's about.
That's why your budget should be half and half.
Let's make no mistake. Oscar voting has always been about, have I seen it? Do I care about it? Do I want to vote for it?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Academy gets sent these packages. They get sent, now it's digital, of voting. And basically, if they haven't seen the film, well, there's no lie detector. You can lie and say, yeah, I don't want to pick that one. I picked this one because if there's 10 Best Picture nominees, I saw 2 of them, and those are the ones I'm going to vote for because I didn't see the other 8. That's how it works, man, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
It didn't used to be that way.
No, I was even telling I was telling like Meg recently because we saw that some of the films I got on the best picture list, and we'll get more into it later on. I was like, I don't really agree with.
Yep.
Like, I didn't see it having more substance than other ones
They're
that were
just
there.
not shying away from it anymore.
And the thing is I was like, but look at who made them.
Mm-hmm.
They have the money. They have the money to pay into these campaign packages, pay into these promotional items,
And
the
don't get me
screeners
wrong,
and everything.
the filmmakers are not at fault here. I'm sorry. I don't think they are. I respect, like, John M. Chu. I think he's one of the more original voices coming. And he's also a big advocate for musicals.
Yeah.
You know, John M. Chu directed Wicked, but he also directed In the Heights.
Yeah.
He also directed Crazy Rich Asians. Like, some of my favorite
those
more
are
modern films right now. He's got a voice. He is a cinematic voice, and he loves cinema.
Okay, so who did this so-called musical of Emily Bettis?
Well, he's a French filmmaker who is very well respected in the
French
indie side of things.
Filmmaker making a...
Jacques something.
Demi.
I don't. No, it's not to me. Jacques something. He's a terrific filmmaker, well in his own right.
But it's not... He's, well, I don't want to use that. I don't know if that's... But he's not part of the Mexican culture, is he?
No, it's not.
He doesn't have to, I get it.
That
but-
one's gonna
Jacques
be
Audiard.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, he
Yeah,
had
no,
even been
no, just
nominated in
Roma.
recent things. Can you zoom into those recents? Yeah. He made a film called like A Prophet, Deep End, The Sisters Brothers. If you didn't hear about that one, like,
yeah, I've seen
I
that
mean, again,
Joaquin,
these are cinematic voice, well within his own right, and I think that as a storyteller, he wanted to try something different, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to always, you try it doesn't always succeed,
We don't know if it did. According to the standard, he's the most nominated filmmaker this season.
Yeah.
But then
So,
we were
you know
just
what I'm
talking
saying?
about it. It's probably just...
No, it may be. No, again,
Fucking
Netflix.
what's
But
going on
again,
right now.
we'll talk about all of that
Yeah, that's
for
Yeah.
the 3-hour
Yeah,
episode.
exactly,
I want
exactly.
to introduce my fellow co-host, Mr. Michael Delao, offering a cinematography perspective on this
It's like a flying carpet.
It sure is.
Look at that.
A whole new world, pal.
A whole new place I've never
Aside from that, he's really good at lighting.
Oh,
He's-
yeah. I love the moving picture.
You do. I didn't know we still had the hearts here. Mr. John Eric Oster offering an acting perspective.
And a very controversial rating for this film.
Ooh, that's
Cheers to
problematic.
that.
Cheers, I suppose.
Cheers indeed.
Hey, I like it in
Cheers.
so many
We're
levels,
trying,
but I dislike it in
A
way more.
crown.
A crown.
That's what it's called.
Cheers, Austin.
Interesting.
Pretty good. It's like a cherry Sprite with
Needs to be brighter.
In appearance?
No. On the tongue.
On the tongue? If you had it earlier, it was brighter. Yeah, it's because it had tonic. Like it was topped with tonic.
That's
and
what
it just,
I taste.
Oh, okay.
No. Use
know what?
seltzer, not tonic. Use a bubbly, not tonic. Tonic is like
Yeah, it's soda.
yeah, but it's a dark. It's not
bubbly.
easy on the tongue
What?
compared to like mineral water.
Like it kind of.
Tonic has got that aftertaste.
You think you don't like
That
tonic?
dark aftertaste.
You
I
don't
don't.
like
I don't
tonic?
like tonic.
Oh, okay. But do you
Yeah, I
like
prefer
this?
mineral.
I like this, but I prefer mineral.
Yeah, same.
Or
same.
something more bubbly.
No, I get what you're
Mr.
saying.
Austin Young offering an editing, producing perspective, making sure we're sounding good on the ones and twos.
And keeping this thing going
Hi,
week
buddy.
to week.
Oh, he cut his camera good, I think.
Don't talk to me that long.
Why is this light yellow?
Why is what? That one? That one's the one he's cut to? Yeah. Don't talk to you, Austin? Why not?
You know exactly why.
I apologized.
What happened?
And you cut the string.
Why don't you let the audience know what's going
What do
on?
you mean I cut
Yeah,
the
what,
string?
what did we
Yeah,
miss?
so it was like impossible to tie it.
What?
I'm sorry. Long story short, I was making the drinks and I came over here and I knew we were going to get started. And then we just kind of ran into it. I didn't put the ice back. And I said, Austin, I'm so sorry. I didn't put the ice back. So then he went to go put
I
it back.
noticed when you walked away. That's why I kept it over here. So what's the problem?
That he had to put the ice back.
So
Yeah, and I was gone for.
And that's
Five-ish minutes.
Watchtower for you guys.
That
behind the
took a
scenes.
long
oh,
time.
that's true. You had to go downstairs. Welcome.
And our humble film servant,
And I'm your humble film servant,
Carlos
Carlos
Hung Delator.
The
offering a writing directing
encyclopedia.
perspective. The encyclopedia of.
I was gonna say the walking encyclopedia of film, but I started with encyclopedia, so I was like, I'll bail.
I appreciate it. I dig it. Once
Roma.
again, we're talking about Best Picture, well, not just Best Picture, but former Oscar winners,
Yeah.
nominees, and I'm up to bat first. So I want to talk about Alfonso Cuaron's Roma. As I was looking back, if you've known my picks in the past, I always like to go back even further. You know, I always like to start somewhere in the 40s or 50s and see what they had to say as far as winning a Best Directing Oscar, because the Best Directing Oscar has always existed.
Yeah.
There's some categories that don't exist. Like, did you guys know that there was a Best Cinematography in black or white?
Yeah, in black and white first and then in color.
Yeah, like there was two, essentially, for a while, and then they did away with them. But just as it's got me, but Best Directing has always kind of existed. So as I was going back, I was like, well, I think I'm going to go with something more traditional. I'll go for like a Billy Wilder pick, or I'll go for William Wyler or something, you know, like in that vein. And then I kind of started going through, and I'm like, we haven't talked about Roma. And it just feels apt to talk about this film now. I think I started feeling that way because, as Austin likes to say, this film walked so other foreign cinema could run in major award ceremonies.
Yeah.
Very true.
But on top of that, I think I felt this way more so cinematically because we're in a weird era of cinema where more cinema like this is being accepted and encouraged. One of the nominees this year that we screened last night, like, totally blew our minds. And, you know, you could pretty much say that this director, that was his first film. and then he made an epic. And you know, we'll talk about that then.
A
But
$10 million epic.
on the $10 million epic, yeah. And, you know, it's very impressive what films like Roma allowed for other filmmakers to kind of do with limited resources. And not that Roma necessarily just kickstarted that, but it definitely was a huge supporter in that. And I think the reason for that is because it was telling a universal story within this context of Mexican cinema and Mexican life that a lot of people weren't really exposed to on a macro level. You don't really see a lot of cinema like that being revered. And Roma was part of a 6-year period in cinema and in the Oscars where Hispanic filmmakers were being revered. I mean, this was Alejandro Iñárritu, Guillermo del Toro, Emmanuel Lubezki, and Alfonso Cuaron being nominated and winning Oscars, starting with Gravity, which was Cuaron's Gravity, into Birdman, into The Revenant, into Shape of Water, into Roma. Like, consistent 5-6 year period where these guys won Oscars and they're Mexican. That's huge.
That is huge.
And again, kickstarting that for us, it's not so foreign because we're Mexican, but kickstarting this revival, this revitalization in foreign cinema.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just felt special. And on top of anything, the little cherry on top for me to say I really want to talk about this film is because of its classist exploration through memory. But it's still so relevant in our world today, especially right now after the election, especially in the city we live in. So I thought it was just going to be really interesting to talk about this. The underlying no shit situation, which I think is going to be controversial amongst the four of us, is that this is living cinema on the screen. This is one of the most amazing ways to be able to tell a story like this. So I'll cap there.
Yeah, that's on you, right?
That's on me.
Oh, okay,
absolutely.
Cool.
Do you want to list off the Oscar noms and wins because
Of that year?
Oh no, for the film that it got, like the nominees. And,
Oh yeah. Like what it got? How many Oscars nominees it got? And stuff. So this film was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film of the Year. Mexico's submission for that, which I thought was weird because Netflix did this was kind of squirmy thing. They bought distribution rights later, but what are the guidelines of that? This was Mexico's submission by an American company for the Oscars. Was it because it's made in Mexico predominantly? Was it because it's all in Spanish? I don't know. But the official title of this award is Best Foreign Language Film. So I don't know. I want to explore that a little more. But Best Foreign Language Film of the Year, Best Achievement in Directing, Best Achievement in Cinematography, Best Motion Picture of the Year, Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role. First-time actress, by the way. We'll talk about this because the more I see this film, the more I understand that she's just a fixture.
Yeah.
A very important fixture. But best actress?
No.
Best performance by an actress in a supporting role. The mom was terrific. She deserved that.
And the grandma, dude. The grandma had some pretty intense
she got
ones.
some moments for sure. But the mom, I mean, she deserved this nod.
She went through a roller coaster for sure.
Best original screenplay, Best Achievement in Production Design, Best Achievement in Sound Editing, and Best Achievement in Sound Mixing, which now are combined, right? Sound mixing and sound editing. Man, this was just 2019. This was just 6 years ago.
I was going to say...
Which is bullshit, by the way, that it's combined.
They updated it from being Best Foreign Language Film to now it's just Best International Film.
International,
Yeah.
That's fine, I guess.
But I mean, I guess that kind of goes into your whole weird mix that foreign language film could be done anywhere with any, foreign language, and would it count?
Yeah.
But
so my bad. So the last two is sound editing and sound mixing?
Yeah, those are now combined.
Okay, that has nothing to do with the score? It's just how...
the Foley, the mixing of the actual sound, the capture of the actual sound.
Because that's all it really was. I mean, street and stuff like that. They didn't have a score or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The soundtrack... The diegetic
soundtrack
was coming in. No, inside.
Yeah.
Inside the picture, what was being listened to in the film.
My bad.
Kind of that's what was leading.
In a way, there was
soundtrack.
score. It was just like you said, it's all the diegetics. Like anytime they go into an environment and you hear like a radio playing and all that.
And I like that. That really does.
And those musical elements, I think, accomplish what the score is trying to do, which is trying to really embed you into
Yeah.
the emotion
I
of
agree
those
with that.
moments.
like
This is
that.
why
I
I
like that.
think this film is eons past a lot of cinema because, I talk to you guys a lot about the Apu trilogy and why I think that's this kind of form of pure cinema,
Dude, I was trying to think of that, man.
right? But Apu trilogy had Sayaji Ray's score,
Yeah.
all three films, very well to where it knows how to pull your heartstrings. Score will pull your heartstrings. This thing pulls your heartstrings by visuals alone. And that's
dialogue.
hard to do. Yeah, in dialogue, but it's hard to do. I mean, I think a lot about the baby scene,
Oh, my goodness.
and seeing something in out of focus, but that drives your emotion entirely by it being out of focus. It's too hard to even see.
In those moments,
And-
they worked that perfectly, but in other moments, I feel like it was just overused.
Okay, well,
yeah.
we'll get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
that. But if you notice the nominees I listed, half of them, about maybe 5 or 6 of them, are just Cuaron. Like cinematography, screenplay, editing, directing. Granted, he had a
get nominated
co-editor.
for editing.
That what?
It didn't get nominated for
It
editing.
didn't get nominated for editing?
No, but really quick, the winners that did win was directing, cinematography, and then best foreign film.
Directing, cinematography, and best foreign. I thought he got nominated for editing.
No.
Okay, then he won his editing Oscar for Gravity then. Right?
Really?
The choice really annoyed me.
Okay, so
Okay.
he's won an Oscar for editing, just not for this film, for Gravity.
For Gravity.
I think
He also did. Oh, okay, damn.
he did Gravity. He directed.
I know he directed, but not the edit.
He co-edited it, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I think like he did too many. He put on too many hats for this one. And I'll tell
Yeah,
you
he
right now
won
when
it
I
for
do my
Gravity.
my
He
score.
won for Gravity. So this motherfucker won for cinematography,
That's
one
dope,
for
yeah. Oh,
directing,
that's-
one for best foreign film, and one for editing.
That's-
This motherfucker. Those are 4 different jobs. Which,
I love the guy.
It's just really impressive, man. And again,
definitely
coming
is.
from somebody like, let me just put it to you this way. This is just my opinion. If I saw somebody like Christopher Nolan get nominated for those 4 things, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like Christopher Nolan on the technical front knows his way around
Right.
cinema, right? Cuarón has always felt just so much more grounded for me. And when you take a look at Cuarón's history and when he met Chivo back in college, it was similar to us to an extent. We had to learn everything.
Right.
You have to learn a little bit of everything to know. And he basically said for Roma, he's like, I basically was just dusting off my cinematography skills that I did have. And again, you're going to work with, my opinion, the best living cinematographer in cinema right now. And you're going to pick up some shit. You're going to pick up some stuff from him.
Yeah.
So it's just that interesting thing where when you hear this guy be like his own editor, and that's not so uncommon in cinema to be your own editor, to be your own DP. But when
But
you
at
hear
this-
that, you
at this level,
at this
largest-
level,
yeah.
at this scale and at this level, right?
Yeah.
Because
It
when you
just
hear
doesn't
that, you
seem
think
smart.
Rodriguez.
It just doesn't seem smart.
What do you mean?
I mean,
Cuarón?
obviously he made it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem smart. Like, yo, take care of
Right,
this, and I'll
right,
take care
right,
of.
right. But I think that-
they failed on the plot. But
the glue, right, to being able to do all these 4 incredibly stressful jobs by yourself is how personal it was. That's the glue
I
holding
appreciate.
this.
Yeah, I respect the hustle, but
When Chivo walked
When
away
it's
from this
personal,
film,
I
and
get
he
it.
was he didn't walk away in a bad way. He just was booked for something else. There's a lot of politics behind that too. When you're part of a union, in the case of Chivo or editors, part of the ASC, the American Society of Cinematography, there's rules, just like any other union. So if you're contractually signed on to do something else, you can't, just because you're a big shot doesn't mean you can drop out of it.
no, yeah, okay, yeah.
So he was contractually signed on to do something else. He was also signed on to do this, but this was... Cuarón's been thinking about this film since 2006. So it's one of those like, yeah, we're going to make strides and we're going to see what it's going to look like. We're going to do tests and I don't know how long it's going to take. It's so personal that I really have to get this right. Where Chivo's probably just like, dude, I can't be on standby. I got to work. Like if Terrence Malick calls, if whoever
Respect.
calls, I got to go. You know,
yeah.
so he probably, I think that's what happened. He could have, and there's also rules in unions where you can't even like shoot X amount of films in 1 year type of shit. So like, again, it could have just been that. And I think he went to go do like song to song or some shit.
Let me ask you this question: do you think he's a better cinematographer or a better director?
Who? Cuarón?
Uh-huh.
Director. Hands down.
Okay, can I start with my rating?
Sure.
That's where it starts.
Sure.
I feel, oh man, this is controversial, and I'm ready. Get the comments ready, put them down. I want them.
Hot take.
Eat it.
I feel like going black and white was more of an artistic decision instead of how I've learned from you guys, instead of being a storytelling tool.
Okay.
I feel like if it was a nice, tasteful,
Do you think he just did it for the sake of like to be artsy?
I feel honestly, and this is gonna be very controversial. I feel like it was a way to make it more appealing and try to make it an instant classic. Like, yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, I can see the instant classic thing, quote unquote, but
it's like,
more
oh, look at this
appealing?
film. It's in black and white, and we're talking.
I
Like,
love that line from Entourage where they make what's the film Queens Boulevard? They make it into color. And then they're screening it, and it looks like one of the guys is like, this shit looks like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, not Queens Boulevard. And then like the studio exec is like, well, we did some tests. People like color.
Yeah.
Black and white is depressing. So I agree. Nobody likes black and white. It's such an outdated form that people.
We've talked about it. Is it a tool to help the story?
It is.
Enhance the story.
Yeah. Absolutely, because this film,
Dude, it's
as
a gimmick.
Del Toro put it, I can shut this down right now.
Okay, now we're going back in time and thinking about the time.
That's the theme. No.
Brother.
It's not that simple. It's not that simple. Let me just put in the words that Del Toro said.
Okay, I love it.
Del Toro said, Roma is not a portrait. Make no mistake.
We look like one.
It's not a portrait. No,
nice.
it's a fresco. It's a mural.
Okay.
It's a mural.
Okay.
Where if you look
That's
back
fine.
at a wide set photograph of a group of people or of a city or of a situation, postcard, right? Color doesn't always necessarily tell the story the way it needs to.
Oh, I think that's just depending on the person.
And make no mistake, black and white also has color. I know that sounds contradictory.
Different shades of gray and black and white. I
These
get it.
contrasting points, these shadows where they need to be and where they don't need to be, help enhance this story.
Give me a scene.
At its most foundational level, I'll come at you. I'll come at you, bro. I'll come into this conversation.
I'll come everywhere, bro.
As
My God.
as a director,
Right.
As a director, the way I think using black and white in this particular film
Yeah, please.
helps neutralize everything
In what way?
in its classism.
Oh, dude, another thing about that.
I'm going to take away color so that you don't see whose dress is yellow or red or black, or you're going to see everybody at their most human level. We're not going to see color in the vehicles, in the dresses, in the environment, so that we can neutralize everybody. And without even color, which is easy, we're humans. We're taught from first grade to dictate red means angry and yellow means happy and green. You know what I'm saying? If we take away all of that and we just see these people for who they are, maybe we can make our own judgment without the film. And that's what Cuaron wanted to do.
That's good, but not enough.
Cuaron wanted this film, specifically the camera work, and not just credit to Cuaron, because he gives credit to Chivo. Chivo did do a lot of the prep work for this film. They wanted this film, they wanted the camera to serve as an observer.
That's what I took. That's the big word.
As an observer, not of history, of memory.
Okay, so let me. So this whole film was a narrative of this guy's Iñárritu, his childhood, giving the great what do you say it, like the thanks to
The women that raised him.
the women, especially the nanny, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it felt like it was more of an observational autobiography instead of obviously
His personal experience. Like this
No,
this wasn't the Fablemans as much as it was.
It felt like he was telling the story of that lady from a distance. And
It is.
why?
Let me
not
tell you
show
why.
her?
Okay,
Let me
wait,
tell you
wait,
why.
wait, wait,
It's just two easy reasons.
Wait.
These are hold on. Let me just give these two easy reasons. In my opinion, two easy reasons. Number one, he was a kid. When you and I think back about generational trauma or
I'll
just
give you that.
trauma in general,
Okay.
we don't remember. We remember how heightened something was from a distance.
So that's what he was going for.
Not that's my opinion. Okay. That's what that's how I'm interpreting that side. The other side of it is he's literally saying, I'm not looking to make true what history says about this era or this neighborhood even in Mexico or
Right.
this city. I'm looking to make true what's in my head about this era. And what happens as we get older? We heighten the memory or we lower a memory. We don't exactly pinpoint it how it really was either,
For
because
sure.
we forgot and we're trying to
For sure.
fill in the gaps of the components of what we don't remember. Or we sensationalize something.
Yeah.
So maybe, as an example, and I know this for a fact because we just saw the behind the scenes.
Uh-huh.
As an example, the cinema.
Okay.
They were showing the plates of the comparisons between the actual photographs of cinema, of how that cinema looked back in the day.
Uh-huh.
And how Cuaron's like, yeah, but I remember it so much bigger. I remember it as a palace. I remember it like this lights and this.
It is fucking true.
And it's true. That's how we
like
remember.
Going back to your home and it's like, oh,
Yes,
wow. Yeah.
exactly. And as an example, as a kid, right? The fire. Maybe it wasn't that big of a fire. But when you're a kid, and it's like, the forest is on fire. Again, it just depends on how you remember it, right? So for those two simple reasons, I'm out. No. For those two simple reasons, I think that it's more important to be faithful to what you're going for there than the traditional way about telling a story or even an autobiographical story. Steven Spielberg just did it for The Fabelmans.
The Fabelmans,
Beautiful picture, beautiful story.
No, that's a picture.
It pulls on the heartstrings. You're in his perspective. You're in Sammy's perspective as a kid, and you feel all of it.
That's what I was expecting.
This was like, if I could go back in time, but not interfere, but not sit in the middle of this again, but just observe, like, and you know why?
That's a pretty good explanation.
You think that what? You know, I think that's really special because we talked about this on the Tu Mamá También episode.
That's a good film.
We talked about how sometimes you make yourself the villain as a writer director.
Yeah.
And how Tenoch is Diego Luna's character?
Yeah.
Tenoch's character, the rich,
Tenoch.
pissy, that was this. Even the living room looks exactly the same as the living room in the Tu Mamá También, the sitting area where they're watching TV. That character was a piece of shit to the servant.
Yeah.
He was kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
Make me a sandwich, fuck off, this, that, right? Not asshole, but he was a rich kid. He was a prissy little kid. Maybe at that time in his life, Cuaron remembers, yeah, I was a piece of shit. That's how I was. I wish I could rectify that. I'm not going to make a whole film about it, but what I can do is paint a portrait of this lady that I knew that helped raise me as a hero.
Ah, man.
But not in a, again, over sensationalization way, but in a way that is human, that is grounded. But she also made strides. There's such a very special thing about Cleo that they say. I think Del Toro's the one that pointed this out. There's like the duality of how these characters see Cleo is fucking interesting because they have this special moment on the beach where she saves them from the water. And then they go back home and, oh my gosh, we almost drowned in Cleo and we love her. And there's this great big moment of appreciation for her, not just on the beach, but when they're back home, they love her. You can see the love again with them. And then one of the kids is like, hey, can you make me a banana shake? Not 10 seconds later. That's the duality. That it didn't matter. She's still lower than you.
Okay, so I guess I was looking at it way different because another piece of that's going to go into my ratings is the main character. I know it's her first.
Yeah.
It's her first
Cleo,
thing.
yeah,
She did great. She did good. Whatever.
She did what she needed to do.
But I feel like the writing for her was underwhelming. There was no development.
Wait, you know why didn't we?
And I understand it's her character.
No. Not
She
even
didn't,
that.
she didn't speak up. My bad. What was up?
I know.
No, I want to, because...
Observational.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I probably wouldn't
It's
watch
not
it.
in her perspective.
I probably watched it wrong, but I was just kind of like, I don't like this.
Please.
Ratings.
You're gonna remember this.
Did you want to say something before my
Either
rating?
over sensationalized.
Yeah, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to remember, like, a gun at each other's face.
Anyways, not what you were gonna say.
Yeah.
No.
About the Cleo character. Or about
No. I wanna dive into the ratings because there's a lot to like dissect
my
in
bad.
each area, and I know that like it all goes into our ratings, but on initial, even we just did a screening. You said
I just
that
have to get that off my chest. But let's do it quick.
you said you didn't. It's not your first. It's obviously like your second or third.
I saw it because it was a big buzz when it first came out.
Oh
These
yeah,
guys made me watch it.
Not
and I
only was
like,
it a big
okay.
buzz, I'll also mention that
Did
during
we?
the Oscars.
No, we weren't doing the podcast.
No,
yet.
we were just having a party. It was the first Oscar party I think I joined you guys for.
Yeah.
No,
But-
that was your Parasite one.
No.
At my house?
Yes. No, at Head's house.
At Heads.
Are you sure?
okay.
That's your Parasite one, yes.
So this is a year
This
before.
was the year before person.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember for this one,
Yeah.
all the talk was that Roma is gonna like sweep. It's gonna take it. It's gonna be the one. And then when it didn't win Best Picture, it was kind of like, come on, like.
And
like,
what
look
year
at it.
that year was Green Book.
Yeah.
That won Best Picture.
So what are you trying to say?
No, I like. It's just a note on Roma. Like there's so much to kind of like dive into because I feel like it really does have its like jewel place in cinema. But
Rating. You were
what's your rating? Just to say that there was a lot of
Kick
buzz.
us off. What's your rating?
Okay, well,
So you're seeing it again.
Yeah, and I like your
and
explanations.
He's gonna give more. Okay,
Yeah.
you didn't weasel your way out of that one. So what?
I'm gonna get more what?
I'm so sorry.
You're gonna get more explanations.
I'm gonna get more cinema-y.
So
I'm gonna comic on your.
this is my rating, and after hearing these
little flower.
explanations, I probably wasn't watching it right, so it might go up. But my initial rating is 6.8.
6.8. Okay, cool.
To
Rad,
defend
bro.
myself a little bit.
All right, Costa,
It's
you
not my
just
style. I know it's
Costa,
cinema.
I don't.
Costa,
Yeah.
you just lost mic and camera privileges. We're gonna stay there. Your mic's muted.
You're gonna zoom into me.
Obviously,
It's
obviously
just
your
not my cup of
rating.
tea.
Obviously, your rating is fair. But for that reason, but that's your only saving grace right now. Is it's just not your cup of tea. It's not what you were
And like, in my
attracted to
opinion,
usually.
It's not his
grapes.
Yeah.
cup of chamomile.
Right. Okay, 6.8.
Who's next?
sorry,
Rapid
guys.
fire.
You.
Me?
Yeah.
9.7.
Let's keep it going.
Rapid fire.
Austin.
Hey, no, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
No!
Chill
I
out.
don't know that.
Yeah.
What is this at the bottom of my glass? And
Can
am
we
I
eat
gonna
it?
die?
Oh no, you can chew on it. It's
What is it?
Huh?
It's a
What is it?
natural horny goat.
It's a flower.
What kind of flower?
Uno de
A
Jamaica.
pretty one.
The ones that make your
Jamaica?
balls tingle.
Oh, that's cool. A hibiscus?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's a hibiscus rose.
Looks nice.
Your hibiscus.
Anyway,
Rating.
and don't you be lying, Craig.
Oh, and then it blooms after you pour the drink. That's
Oh,
what
yeah,
makes it
that's
kind of like
pretty
a crown.
Nice.
We should videotape it next time.
Hey, Castro, right here.
I'm looking.
Right here.
Me and you.
Right
You,
here.
you Captain?
It's a dime.
It's a dime.
It's a dime.
There's
doesn't have-
nothing wrong with it.
A dime for the man.
You,
a dime.
you can rewatch it tomorrow in the toilet,
Yep.
anywhere.
Yep.
Okay.
I think I've only given out a handful of dimes on this show.
Yeah, we're talking about that. So this
Yeah,
is
he's
dime. Can you give me a little? Just I know it's
he's a
rapid
picky
fire.
bastard.
Just what was it? One sentence if you want. The way it was told, the way it was pictured, the way
Well,
it all
outside
came
of the
together.
beautiful cinematography, where it's just a series of beautiful photographs,
Yeah, I'll give you that.
it brings you into the life of the different classes in Mexico
Cleopatra.
City at the time that hasn't been told before. It hasn't been told in this fashion.
Yeah, it's observational. I get it.
Carlos.
A 10.
Dime.
I'm fairly close to a dime. I'll put it at about a 9.5.
9.5.
And I think the 0.5 really just doesn't come or is not because it's lacking anything as much as it is similar to other films that we've discussed on this podcast that we like either give 10s to or we're like, I don't think I'll understand the full capability of this film for years. I think it's something I will be thinking about for a long time. And it's interesting because when a filmmaker can take you back to an era,
Bring it on back.
typically they want to
Just put it in
focus,
black and white, and you'll start. That's a good start.
typically they'll want to focus on what's so important about that era for the sake of that era, why we shouldn't forget that era. That's
Yeah.
what historians do. Historians will tell you don't forget the past so that it informs the future. That's it. A cinephile like Cuaron knows to go back into cinema, understand what makes it special, and then modernize it in a way that when he's telling his story, he's not trying to tell you the history of Mexico City in the 1970s. He's trying to tell you about a moment frozen in time in his memory. And some of the principles that he used, some of the backdrops rather, at least on this screening, I picked up on so much more of why they're informing that. Similar to like Y Tu Mamá También, where the descriptions, right? The voiceovers. The voiceovers of this mountain had this, that, and the third, and that's why this road was created, and that's why they can drive on this road now. That's what Y Tu Mamá También really does special, right? For me.
Yeah.
And it took 10 screenings to get to that point. This one on this might be my 5th screening. Picking up the backdrop of the politics that were happening in Mexico City at the time.
It's good. Genius.
Did something really special. Did something that Y Tu Mamá También and In the Mood for Love both did and brought it together so much for me. I've told you guys in the past, I love cinema that uses a world situation, the osmosis of the universe to
Yes.
change one person's life. Not change the world necessarily. It's changing the world automatically, but
How it
by
affects-
proxy, in a very magical realism way, there's if you pay close attention, Cleo's pregnancy really falls through as like the world telling her, like, this isn't your baby. This isn't the life you want. You don't want to have the baby of a man that denies that baby. You're kind of seeing a version of that through your employer and their relationship and their kids who you love. You don't want that. This man isn't good for you. He fucking left you high and dry, even though you know very well he's the man. He's the father of the baby that you're carrying. And what has to happen? There has to be a riot right at the moment where she's standing at a department store where this man comes in with, at gunpoint, killing somebody else, for her to understand, holy shit, this was the dude that impregnated me?
Yeah, no good.
And at that very, very moment, her water breaks and the baby comes out to be a stillborn baby. That's like, to me, the universe orchestrating all of this so that Cleo wouldn't end up in a miserable life.
See, and I'm more familiar, and I like more of the development, and whereas with her, she showed no emotion.
But you know what I thought is what I think is special about that?
Like there was,
You don't think Cuaron is doing that? Look, Cuaron has no other perspective than the one he faced, right?
yeah, that's you're giving me that
was
right now.
a
Yeah,
rich kid
And
looking
upper cla-
at this woman who he dearly loved, obviously, but voiceless, powerless.
that's why I think like I'm seeing it like an upperclassman, an upper class filmmaker, just giving you a distant view of this person that
That's the only view he can offer. That's the
that's
only view that's
good.
true to him.
that's
Yeah.
I haven't lived with that a little bit, but
No, I mean, like, think of it this way. Like, when you think of, like, you know...
it's good. It's good.
Like a grandparent or, like, an aunt or uncle or, like, the people that came in at your early childhood moments, you never saw them being these full developed characters. You just saw them as being like, oh, you're the one who, like, comes and, like, wakes me up. And those
Yeah.
moments...
That's genius.
In those moments... She was like super sweet and very like she would have longer conversations with the kids about like playing their little games or waking them up.
Yeah.
But when it came to things that like as an adult would be these large fights, conversations.
And we
And,
see that when the kid's listening to the, and she's like,
Like
no,
it's
get over
slapped,
here,
yeah.
get over here, like,
And
Yeah.
a warmth that his parents weren't able to offer in these moments. His mom is
so you
sweet.
think-
His mom is loving. Their
Yeah,
mom
yeah.
is loving. The mom loves,
But she's stressed.
but she's going through her own
exactly.
shit. And the saving grace in that scenario for these kids was Cleo.
Like her calm demeanor.
Yeah.
Her calm demeanor, her loving soul. Not just
And
that.
I get it. I don't like the I guess I just didn't
Yeah.
like the
It's
observation.
an observation. Let me
I
put it.
was
Let's
waiting
put it
for
this
like
way. It's like what
her to cry or
What's the,
retaliate or something. But it was
Oh,
just,
and that's the thing.
But I know-
when
yeah, no,
when
you're
in
making
this
sense.
film did we see Cleo in high emotion?
no.
No, we did
During the baby.
during the birth.
True.
That was the moment of the highest emotion she could possibly give. This was the fruit of her loins. This was her baby. Her almost like.
But
and-
no,
and this-
look, at the end, what did she say?
She didn't want it to be born.
So that's why I was like, okay, that's why she didn't go overboard. You know how people, oh my God. She was just kind of like crying.
Yeah, but processing, right? I mean, that's heavy
Shock,
on anybody's
yeah, I guess
shock,
so.
and but more so, she's saying something that maybe a lot of people in her position are afraid to say. I'm impregnated by a man who I don't want to be with, who now I know I don't want to be with, who really disappointed me, who would have been this baby would have been a fatherless child.
No, not only that. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, she's not dumb. She recognizes like her socioeconomic status. Like
Damn, that's hard.
she has to go with her employer to get like a crib and everything.
Yeah.
And then when they're like, oh, this is the price, she's like, no, we've always had a discount here. Like she's so dependent on these people taking care of her.
And you're right. There is an intelligence factor there, a street smart thing, if you will. I wasn't really going to get into this until later, until we got deeper, maybe.
Yeah.
But I had the foresight, the fortune, and I know how you guys are going to look at me, but this is not really what happened, of having a Cleo. I didn't have a nanny. I didn't have a maid.
Yeah, me neither. I had someone that cleaned.
No, I had someone that. It's very complicated, but when my family fell apart, if you will,
Nice.
and we moved out of town, my mom needed help. My mom was a single mom working 2 jobs and had 3 kids.
Oh yeah.
And more than anything, it's depended on my older brother and for us to kind of, do what we could to pitch in. Mm-hmm. But she needed an adult present so that if the cops needed to come to the house, there was an adult to speak to. There was somebody present for us, right? This individual lived with us my whole childhood and barely died like 2 years ago. And her name was Juvencia. We would call her Juve. And she was a part of the family. She was a friend of my grandmother's, a friend of my grandmother's from Durango,
That just
who just
tagged
needed
along.
a life
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
She didn't have high intelligence. I don't think she even ever went to school, like grade school.
Okay.
So, all of that to inform like a person in that position. Granted, it's a little different because of migrating, but the class system situation is still the same. This person was there for us constantly, but her not just her socioeconomical status, but her lack of education, her lack of just basic human function in a lot of situations. She was a child, dude. Like in her old age, was a child mentally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
think
see what
all
you're
of that
saying.
comes into play a lot. Like have to be so dependent on an employer or to do the next steps. Typically in 1970s Mexico, the way out for somebody like that, the way out for a maid or living with an employer is to get married to a man that's going to make money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This was her way out. This was her way out of this socioeconomical status, at least a little bit. That this dude fucking, and I think this is also a bit of a horror story. How much fear Cleo must have had in her status. And the true humanity that comes from all of this is how she connects with the mom because she's going to something similar. And they're both kind of a safe haven to each other. You don't get that humanitarian kind of factor from like somebody who's rich. It doesn't happen just for the sake of happening. It happens because you care about that person. I got to see that a bit with my family, right? With my mom and my grandmother really we'd pay for surgeries for this woman. We'd pay for her well-being, doctor's appointments, anything that she needed to live. And she was a very humble person. She didn't want her own room. She slept on the couch.
That's why you did it, because you knew she was humble. She wasn't like,
Yeah,
but
she
also
wasn't
like,
entitled in the slightest.
no.
There's no entitlement there.
I bet, yeah.
I think that having the foresight of having that kind of perspective, I relate to it a little more, right, in that sense. And I also had another individual who we grew up with, who was a friend of my grandma's, who would come stay with us on the weekends, every weekend since I was 3 years old, maybe earlier.
Just to stay or clean?
She was just staying.
Oh, just
so
staying.
basically what happened is she worked in the rich houses up in Scenic Drive.
Right.
And her employer was one specific family that lived deep in the hills, a gated community up there in Scenic Drive. We'd pick her up every weekend from the gate, and she didn't have family here. She just stayed with us because on the weekends, like that was her days off.
Yeah.
That family needs their privacy too. They want to spend family time.
It's easy.
So she would stay with us, and to go every weekend to pick her up from this place and hear stories. They weren't rude to her or anything like that. They were like, she grew up with those kids. And once those kids went off to college, thank you for your service. Deuces.
God.
And then she worked for another family in Socorro. Rich family, huge house. I mean, fucking like down the street from my grandma's house, so like in the woods, literally in the woods against the Mexican border. They made woods, like they made oak trees and shit, like
To surround themselves with. Yeah.
yes, privacy. Same situation. Their kid got to a point where They didn't need her anymore. And then she went back to Mexico. She's like, well, I'm going to go back. In her words, "Me voy a regresar a mi tierra." It's time. That's her version of retirement.
Jesus.
I'm going to go back to the humble life of my land. You know, and again, just having that foresight a little bit helps me put things into perspective a lot faster, just on a personal level.
Okay, yeah,
To make me feel like if I wanted to tell the story of these women, where do I start? I didn't know them I didn't know them like that. I knew them. They were personal. They were close. I didn't know them like that. Imagine having to come up with this, like someone that raised you, quote unquote, who you deeply care about. Imagine having to come up with a date idea for a film for them.
yeah.
Cuaron wrote his nanny's version of a date of going to a movie and then fucking. Like, imagine the intimacy that requires, but at the same time, the uncomfortability. Like, it's weird, dude. It's like writing a scene about your parents doing something normal.
Almost,
like,
right?
because they're
Almost.
your parents.
Yeah.
It's there's so many layers to why this film is very special in that sense. And again, for me, I didn't realize until now that I had a biased kind of view on it because of the women, quote unquote, that raised me. But I think that adds to the equation for me a little bit.
No, man. I mean, it kind of
And
makes
we
sense.
haven't even gotten into the cinematics, gentlemen. This is just
I just had to
what
get that
this
off my
film
chest,
is
bro.
doing and why it's important to do it from an observational level. Because I tell filmmakers all the time, there's filmmakers who can do it, and I envy those filmmakers. Like, the generic filmmaker, film student answer that somebody will give, a director will give a student, is like, make it personal. Tell your personal story. And that's such a blanket statement. It's like, well, no shit, dude, but that's hard. That's harder than making a fictional story, in my opinion.
Actually, yeah.
But I can't do fiction for the sake of fiction. It doesn't fuel me. It doesn't, you know what I'm saying? I can't draw anything from it. I can draw from experiences in my life. The way I've always been able to interpret it is, and I have these conversations with my wife, because that's all I write, I guess, is like love stories, complicated, weird love stories, where she's told me in the past, like, you ever going to start writing about that girl? You know, because we talk, and you say, yeah, it was about this girl or about that. And my rebuttal is very true. It sounds like a cop-out. It really isn't. My rebuttal is always, I'm not writing about the girl. I'm writing about the emotion that I felt in that moment.
Beautiful.
And the exploration of that emotion. What did that emotion mean?
That's good.
What did that feeling kind of feel? Made me feel, can I communicate that feeling in cinema? That's the challenge for me, right? So I can't, if I went back to tell a story about these ladies that raised me, I didn't have an intimate relationship with them. I don't know what they did for fun. Like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know them that way. What I do know is
It was in color.
Is what?
It was in color.
Yeah, because it was the early 2000s.
Not this fucking gimmick shit.
No.
You know what?
It's a
You know when it's a
photograph,
gimmick?
man.
We want to get to the cinematic because I really want to be, what do you taught? Why that was a tool instead of an artistic.
No, because you know
choice.
what? A lot of I know what gimmick you're talking about. Like, there's movies, and I mean the
black and white?
the cliche one is like The Artist. And I remember when The Artist came out, and I showed it to like my family. My mom loved it, and I loved it. And my father was like, "Oh, it's this artsy film called The Artist, and it's in black and white, and like, it uses these like high contrast things, and like it just feels like." You're doing that to, like, a lot of film students will do it.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of film students, I think, will put
They
on
think
the
it
gimmick.
adds production value too.
Yeah,
right?
they think it adds production value where it's like, oh, we're going to shoot it in black and white. And then really quickly, even though you're, like, removing color, they can come up with a million answers for like, oh, it like adds nostalgia, or it creates high contrast of like the black and white nature of this emotion and the duality of perspective, and it can get real metaphorical real quick.
Yeah, look, but I've only ever shot one film in black and white. It was The Tram. We didn't shoot it in black and white, right? We
did it to save time.
We only did it to save time. First of all, second of all, we did it so that certain elements of this zombie film didn't come out as cheesy. There was artistic merit because like we got some pretty damn good shots out of this thing, and like we got a lot of good moments out of this thing. But there's people who do it just for the sake of it looks cool.
No, to me it's just right away. The gimmick to me is like Black and white. Oh, they're thinking about something back.
The difference between it being a gimmick and a tool
You think it's a duality of time?
Yeah,
We're going to use black and white to transport us back in time.
I feel like that was a gimmick for them. Like
In this scenario, in this film.
yeah,
Okay. Thoughts?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the difference between it being something that's a gimmick, like we talk about like the film students, and something like this where it's considered cinematic and cinema is the intention behind it.
Okay.
I think
Exactly. That's
this
what I was
one
trying to figure
had this one had the intention before like before they even explored this being like the final option, you know. Like excuse me, kind of like what Carlos was saying, the element of the fact that it neutralizes the classism. A lot of times I feel like when you look into like Mexican culture, the way houses are painted, the way that the landscape is set color wise, you'll usually find brighter tones used for elegance in like people and the dresses in the houses.
Coco.
Yeah. Where color, the more color there is.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. My bad. That's why I have to include. If it's in a tasteful, colorful scheme, but not
Here's
just
the thing,
bright.
though.
Yeah, go for it.
To add to that, to like really just like, maybe I'm wrong. You
Yeah.
tell me. Maybe, just maybe, Cuaron being this seasoned filmmaker by this time, right? Who's made both Mexican and American cinema. Maybe he also wanted to neutralize the view of Mexico.
Yeah.
Because what's the view of
Whoa, whoa,
Mexico
whoa.
in American audiences or an even international audience? And we make fun of it all the time. It's sepia tone, and if it's not sepia tone, it's sarapes.
I've seen that.
And you know what I'm saying? It's these typical caricature Mexican kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe he also tried to just neutralize the country
It's a
for
little far-fetched,
everybody.
but it's still there. I guess.
No. Because you
Maybe
know,
I don't know.
I feel like when you look at a lot of these brighter tones and all that, it puts you somewhere else, and maybe we wouldn't have been able to have that neutral feeling. Like the classism would have been way too apparent, and then that also goes into saturating an ideology.
And you can oversaturate in black and white too. You could get so contrasty that
No,
it
it
looks like
looked nice.
Nosferatu.
It looked nice.
You know, like you could do that. Let me ask you guys
beautiful.
this. Did you guys, I also think it alienizes us. I never felt like I was part of this family. I don't think he ever intended it to be that way. It's completely observational.
Exactly.
What's more observational than like black and white, right?
Like
Documentaries,
that, like that fly in the wall type.
you fly in the wall, cinema verite. You know, what is that? What's more observational than that? You know, not just flying the wall, but almost like an archive.
Yeah.
Archive is, and you're right, it transports you to a different time. But it doesn't have a choice. An archive doesn't have a choice. That's all they had available.
Yeah.
Right?
Because talking cinema, I really don't know why the panning was for. I guess it's just that's why I want. Is it just to show while not showing what's going on? I guess in a way. I know that sounds.
You know
weird.
what? So what they do a lot in like Chivo cinematography, right? Like when we were talking about
This
like
is what I love. Okay, I gotta
like
get used
Children
to
of
this.
Men.
Oh, there we go. It's a fucking movie.
What I loved about the cinematography and what they accomplished here with a much more minimal setup
I'm gonna bring up something.
was they like when you watch a movie and they always talk about that fourth wall, right? You always imagine like it's happening within a box, like, and you being an actor, you've seen it where like as long as the camera's facing this way, we're in a set, we're in a place. It's something that like in my box, I'm a son dealing with the loss of a father. As long as I'm in this box, I'm a zookeeper, or I'm a policeman, or I'm a fireman. I'm whatever this is.
Right.
Outside of the box, I'm not real anymore, and the scene's not real. What's bold about these choices in this long panning and very still and very stable, and also in the deep focus that you can see everything in the environment.
That's massive.
Everything, everywhere you look, it's real.
The dynamic range
And
of
the fact that the children, nobody is bound to the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had to act in a scene where they say, "Oh, your
This is your
blockage,
blocking.
yeah,
Yeah.
your blockage is this. Start over there
There's
and
your
walk
mark.
this way, but don't go too far over here because then we're going to get you out of focus and all that."
Yeah.
No, here it's sharp. It's wide.
Yeah.
The panning is basically letting the audience know we're not going to hide anything.
Yeah.
This is their
We're
life.
not bullshitting this environment. This is the environment
Yeah,
you're
because normally when you do like whip pans, you're trying to create excitement. When you do shallow depth of the field, you're trying to control the audience's view.
Yeah.
You're basically like doing a little magic trick where you're saying, I only want you to see this part.
And you know why?
Yeah.
Because that's how cinema works and behind the scenes, right? James Cameron says the best. He's like, when was it ever real, right? Like, there's a half a wall there.
Yeah.
Some guy's ass crack hanging up there. You can't see. And like, what's beautiful about this is that's why I say that you use your tools. They like showed in the behind the scenes where Cuaron wasn't afraid to put a camera in the middle, a light in the middle of the fucking scene to get the lighting he was going for, and then you just digitally erase it later.
Oh shit.
Putting a fucking light in the scene.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's to make it bright enough that you can have that sharp focus.
And softness on the texture.
Yeah.
You like you were saying is I felt like I was working on an old movie because I was shooting on the 65 millimeter Arri censored camera, this huge format camera, huge camera, heavy camera, and I had to bring in the light to compensate for this big sensor. So I felt like I was in a movie from back in the day because I had to bring these big Arri lights, this big Arri camera to get what I was trying to get.
Yeah.
Can I read an excerpt that might help?
Please.
With
I
this
love all this.
pan dilemma.
I love all this. I mean, you guys don't love this shit. You're not
Nobody caught that?
cinephiles.
According to Emanuel Lubezki, the scene blocking is very perpendicular to the lens. The actors move parallel to the camera, and the shots are composed in a Z-axis rather than an X-axis.
Oh, okay. I
To
kind of
make the
understand that.
camera almost a consciousness revisiting the story, as though the camera knows something the actors don't. Because when you know, the way we process memory, we know the end of the memory. We know what's going to happen. We lived it. We know, we remember. So we know. We're an observer that knows. So it's almost like the camera's getting to a point where it's like, oh, and then when I turned to this side of the room, there was a shelf with books and this. And then you get ahead, right? Of yourself.
Right.
So he says...
I like that.
Alfonso Cuaron, on the other hand, counters this notion by stating that the position of the camera is like the ghost of the present that is visiting the past. Without getting involved,
That's
just
heavy.
observing, not trying to make a judgment or commentary, and adds that everything there, like the law saying, everything. You create this shallow depth of field, right?
Or deep depth of
Or
field.
deep depth of field, you're right. Everything there is a commentary of the moment, a commentary of the memory.
Yeah,
Commentary in
that's
and
what
of
I'm-
itself.
that's what I'm holding on
it's
to.
It's not set design.
It's real.
It's not filler. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, because when we remember something, we remember, as an example,
That's what I'm going with.
if we remember a memory of sitting in the kitchen and talking to our moms at the dinner table, and she always had a cookbook by the stove and she had an egg timer there, those things meant something. They meant mom.
Yeah.
They didn't mean house. You know, like every single I mean, even the bookcases became a big important part of the story at the end. That's using cinematography to really, really, really point out.
Real quick, what happened? My bad. What happened with the Chucky's? Did the mom sell them or the guy took them?
The dad took them.
Oh, okay. I thought the mom was like in cash and sold them.
No.
But
there's
yeah, the dad took them.
there's an interesting conversation that's been had towards cinematography in VR spaces.
VR.
They've tried to make films with these VR cameras that can do 360, and with that, they also have sensors that track where the eye looks. So, you know, if you had to film a scene, right? Like, let's say you're filming a scene of 3 soldiers in a forest and they're hunting down zombies and they're trying not to get attacked, but they're just like the only ones left, last survivor kind of situation.
Okay.
A lot of times they would tell people, like, you know, we want you to watch this short film or this movie, and it's with a VR camera so you can look everywhere. You know, the whole idea being that the whole area is alive. Well, what they noticed is that basically the people in these VR headsets would fix on a spot and just kind of stay there. They don't look at what's happening behind. They don't look at what's happening in front and all that. And similar to common cinematography, whenever you're filming a scene, you're focusing more on what to emphasize. You don't focus on every little piece.
You're trying to draw the eye
Right.
to what's important.
What's bold about this and what makes this so special, and the reason it got like a win for best cinematography, is that it gives you the entire space, and in this very sterile, clean way, where you feel like you're experiencing the entirety of a memory without getting lost and without getting to a place where you feel like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I should focus on, because everybody's moving around and doing their own things, but it's this gentle hover and a very well executed hover. So that way we can know what we need to look at without it being too much.
You know what I think about when I think about the cinematography of this, right? At the very least, the production design and the blocking and the camera movement. When you think back at your most special Christmas,
Yeah.
I got a scooter.
That's how you process this memory.
Colorful.
But
I'm just like, go, stay with it.
You do this.
Yeah. I'm trying to, I'm visualizing it now.
And the trees there, and the ornaments are there, and my mom's there, and the gifts are there, and the dog's there, and the door outside is there, and then you look out the window and there's the tree. I mean, like,
Castro's mom was there too.
Bro, hey,
For Christmas.
timestamp, delete that. Let's go back.
it's how you process the memory before, like, almost you can dive into the memory. It's like, what information am I remembering and or making up to remember this memory before I kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of what this memory is even about. Because it may have been this beautiful Christmas morning where we have this and the gifts and the dog and my siblings and my mom and my dad. And then, like, now that I'm settled and I remember, like, how beautiful it was, and then my mom and dad got in a fight in this memory. How did I process that? Do I remember smashed windows? Do I remember, like, what do I remember? You know, how do I kind of feel? It's like a Where's Waldo of how much of this memory I can make up or reconfigure. It's like the Matrix, man. It's like the information of the Matrix with the ones and zeros. All of these set pieces, all of this intention behind the camera movement to find the space, like the Z-axis. It's like loading memory.
Good. That's a good interpretation.
And then by the time I load the memory, what happened in the memory? How did I process that memory? Did it matter?
That's a video clip right there.
It obviously mattered. It made such an impact that I still remember it.
Yeah.
That's fucking huge. That's like, I like the comparison you put about VR though, because it's what VR is trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the big thing is we haven't accomplished it with VR.
No.
With VR, it's almost too much information for
too
people.
synthetic.
And they don't get it. Nobody's able to, like, watch a VR movie and feel like, whoa, I felt like I experienced everything. Yeah. We need a camera or an angle. Like, what cinema does great is it fixes us on what we need to understand.
I see that.
And at the formats. Human beings process this at 24 frames. Like, even the format of cinema, it puts the photography that it's captured at a frame rate that we process it as movement. It's never movement. It's actually a magic trick, but it not so much of a magic trick that it gets lost and we don't understand it.
No.
It makes us feel like we understand it because of our limitations as humans. Almost like, I can understand this. I can understand this photograph because I've looked at an old photograph before. Mm-hmm. Especially, that's why I think it hits us a little more harder because our parents or grandparents have all brought the tin out with pictures from Juarez and what it used to look like, and then taking us to the catedral and said, they used to be this, and then taking us to the, the restaurants and the cafes that once were, like, I had a whole conversation, and I'm not giving anything away because I haven't even talked to Austin about this. Like, this is something I've been, like, had in the back of my head for a long time. I've had a conversation for years with my dad and my uncles and my grandma when I can get them in the room together. I never met my grandpa. And everybody tells me, you look just like him, you were as tall as he is, you have the same hair, like, and you see photographs and dude, like, fucking spitting image. And apparently, like, my dad and I are very similar in attitude to him. He was kind of like quick to anger kind of guy, but like Mexican machismo dude. And I just always was fascinated by, like, well, who is this man that I'm so similar to? Like, I've always wanted to meet him.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So it went into wanting to know more about my grandpa and asking, like, it was like a round table. Anytime there was family functions, I'd, like, get everybody together at the table and be like, almost like a reporter, like, so then what was he like in this? And he was like a chef for Chinese restaurants in Juarez.
Damn.
And he was like their, like, most prized chef to them because they would hire him in different restaurants. And but he was also a man who would go on drunken benders on the weekends and not come back to the following week and come back on a horse. Like,
that's my guy.
This is so fascinating. But then that drew into, like, wow, there must have been a reason for him to be like that. Usually it's circumstance. What car did he drive? And that's what this film got me. Like the Galaxy that their dad drives is such a factor into his personality.
Yeah.
That's why the mom crashes it. It's not because she's a bad driver. She can't come into this garage. It's because
she was drunk.
Well, she was drunk, but it's about what this car represents. This car represented him. We see that in his first introduction. The music, Vivaldi or whatever's playing, and he's got his cigarettes, and he knows every inch of this car. He knows when to.
He's being
the mirrors are
careful.
gonna. This was his baby, right?
Yeah.
For all we know, this Ford Galaxy, and it's an extension of him, if you will, right? So I got to a point where like I wanted to know that, and then that drew into like, hey, what were cinemas like back then? What were the cinemas in Juarez? I want to know what. And this was around the time when I was writing a musical, and I needed to know certain pieces of theater of Juarez to know what that meant and what it looked like. And I have like pages and pages and tabs of historical photos of cinemas in Juarez.
Wow.
And most of them were nudie cinemas, and like that's all that existed in Juarez to an extent. And if they were any other cinemas in Juarez, they were like second run shows or second run houses or Cantinflas kind of cinemas. Like that's all they were showing. They didn't even get American pictures, at least in Juarez. Maybe in Mexico City they did, but
Dude, to this day, you gotta wait like 2 months to hit the fucking cinemas, bro.
And that's always just been so fascinating to me. Of like this, like I'm a sucker for pull out the tins. I want to know that's getting lost. Like nobody like. You'd think people are digitizing this shit, but they're not. I can't go on Google and put like Juarez cinemas and find everything. I can't. Like, please, like if you have old photographs of my
put 'em up,
grandpa,
somebody. Just
like bring out these tins. And this was like that version. The palatable factor of this film was it's just a photograph. Let me just show you this photograph of my past. Can you process it? The same way if grandma brings out her tin and shows me a black and white photograph.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
That's I think the most palatable thing. The most like
That's
ease you in. It's not fast camera movements. It's not fancy tricks. It's just a photograph. Let me draw you into this world really quick in the most like calm, serene way possible, so that you don't scare the audience away. And sure enough, again, I don't know how much of this was Netflix campaigning. This film was #1 on Netflix for a long
I remember it was a
time.
big movie.
You know, it came out around Christmas time, if I'm not mistaken. No?
Yeah.
And people were glued to this thing and raving about it and talking about it. I don't remember the last time a streaming film did that. Streaming film.
Yeah.
I remember hearing stuff like that about like the new Avatar in cinemas, not at streaming, in cinemas or something like that. I'm hearing that more about like the what did we watch last night? The Brutalist.
Okay.
That's the buzz you're hearing. I can't remember the last time I heard a streaming film be like, it's beautiful and it's this and it's that and and I watched it with like Austin was saying. Austin watched it with his mom, and his mom was like, "Oh, I remember when we were going through that and we did this and we did that." And I'm willing to bet that both on the American and Mexican side there was versions of this. Because it's not a film about immigration, or trafficking or drugs. It's a film about family and the family falling apart and
naked kung fu.
And naked kung fu, naturally.
Well, the way I kind of summarize it is it's kind of his show of appreciation for this lady that took care of him.
Yeah.
And something he couldn't do as a storyteller until he got to this age.
Yeah.
Like, how can I revere this woman? How can I'm going to tell her story in a way I know the world will understand it.
Okay, and what if you would have...
We've talked about this. Some stuff can get so personal that it gets lost in the sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Some stuff can get so personal that it doesn't make sense for anybody but you. Well, then you just made congratulations. You played yourself. You just made a film for yourself. No audience is going to get this shit. It's not universal because it's about the time. I'm not going to repeat the instance we always talked about because somebody will listen out there. But we know filmmakers that make films or write scripts that we read and they're like, okay, so you had a moment, in high school where your prom date left you and you were wearing green shoes. Cool. That didn't happen to me.
You know,
so it's not. What do green shoes mean to me? It don't fucking mean dick.
So like,
you know,
What about the red shoes
the red shoes mean a lot.
They're fucking
La
hot. bro.
Blanche.
or the red balloon?
Red high
balloon.
heels with red lipstick.
No, they talk about this all the time that in students who are writing their script, sometimes they'll use so much detail and think that they're making substance. They'll use
I've been
they'll
guilty of
use details like, oh, and then the
bookshelf was dusty because
and
the
it was
blue
this
book
big,
was
and the dust hit this way. When the wind blew, it turned this page,
Y'all read my
but then
script?
it went back. Yeah, no. And a lot of people do it, and what they say is that you feel like because you're writing down all these details, you're painting a more vivid story because
That's
to
what-
us, it's so personal. We remember that moment where we're sitting down and we remember the breakup and we remember what we saw around us the day after the breakup and how we just felt so much emotion over everything. But that doesn't convey,
You know what's fascinating about Cuaron trying to communicate something as personal to here? And Austin's convinced otherwise, but this is the official story. The official story is that nobody got a full script of Roma. Nobody except Cuaron had a full script of Roma. Every day, he would hand lines to his
There
actors.
was no script.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what Austin believes. Every day, he would hand lines to his actors. He would communicate to department heads, I need this for this reason, and this is what we're going to do.
The day of shooting?
No, the day before shooting.
Wow, that's risky, man.
It is. But I think if you put all of this in 100 pages and somebody reads it and they're like, wait, naked dude to swing in what? Like, they're in a soccer field doing karate? What the fuck are you talking? I don't get this. It's not going to communicate. But because, he has the clout of winning Oscars for Gravity, he could, at this point, do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's why.
But that's why I say that, like, I kind of envy those. Look, there's a book that was kind of made into a film, and I don't think it's ever good. But Cormac McCarthy, celebrated novelist, Pulitzer Prize winner, terrific author who has a lot of history with El Paso, by the way, wrote a book called The Road. And I read The Road in high school. And I remember what got me about this book, because I came from the school of Robert Frost and Shakespeare and how detail in literature and words and how we can use words. And I love that. I still very much love that. But Cormac McCarthy, who also wrote No Country for Old Men, by the way, the book, made The Road, and it's a father and the son trying to survive this post-apocalyptic world, looking for supplies and food. And it's just these two people trying to escape basically zombies and harmful like stuff in the air.
Jackie Chan
And the
collection.
These two characters, the dad especially, I mean, it's a dad and like a 10-year-old boy. They don't talk. They're very short with their words, especially the dad. He's just trying to survive. So he's very like, no, yes, go there, do this, get that supply. Like, that's how he talks to the kid. And the kid is like, Dad, but I want to do this. Or, hey, Dad, I'm scared. That's all there is to it. There's no more detail than that. And that makes this story very vivid and very personal. And it didn't have to say, we roamed across the desert for 30 days and picked up grass. Like, no, it didn't have to say any of that. Or the dad didn't have to sit and let me tell you, son. And I write like that. That's why I envy writers who can do that. I write like, let me sit you down and tell you about life, kid. Those are my characters, right? Because I don't know. But like, I envy writers who can do so much with so little. And let's face it, the dialogue that does exist in this film and the exposition is so minimal that you don't even need it. He did all of this through visual storytelling. The dialogue was not that compelling. And if it was, it wasn't because it was long or detailed. It was because it got in, said what we need to say, and got out.
Yeah.
No muss, no fuss. The conversations with the guy, they made out most of the time. He said how martial arts saved his life. Cool. That was four lines.
Yeah.
Her talking to the friend in the Machica language or whatever, right? 4 lines, 3 lines, 2 lines. Like, there was no dialogue. This was not a dialogue-driven film. It did nothing other than tell you a little about these characters.
The only time you would get something, and it was really just to emphasize a moment, was like when I guess the disparity between the two of them when she brings up that she's pregnant. And she says like, Senora, when you have a minute, can I talk to you? And then she says, oh, I think I might be pregnant. And then they try peering in and asking questions. And she's like, well, I don't know. Just, that's how it is. But then the only thing she says is like, are you going to fire me?
Right.
And like in that's all you need
that's all you need
to understand
Aware
her
of characters.
stress, what she's going through, what the dynamic is between the two of them, and then everything else. Like even I think the kids come in, they're like, "Oh, I drew a plane. What do you think?" And then they have to stop their conversation and go back.
But thus is life. Right?
Yeah,
Thus is life. Like
you understand with both of them, like, oh, she needs to go back to being the nanny role.
Yeah.
The mom needs to go back to, I need these kids to
write a letter to their dad.
Hail Mary to hopefully get him to understand.
They also did that through the mom character.
Yeah.
Like leading up to the kid spying on her through the door scene.
Yeah.
We get this wide pan again, and we hear the mom on the phone in the distance. And as you listen, and as we get closer and the sound gets louder, it's her venting to a friend of, he went with his mistress to Acapulco and hasn't sent a dime in 6 months, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And like, that could be taken as exposition, but it didn't tell you a full story. It gave you a fragment of where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Just enough for the kid, Cuaron's character,
To learn
and to later, 50 years later, remember this fragment of the conversation.
Yeah.
This impactful fragment of the conversation. Like, it's so impressive to me, dude, because I don't think I think I'm getting better at that as a writer, but I definitely can't do that. I definitely can't like give you a fragment because I always feel like I have to tell you the whole story for it to connect.
Yeah.
But you really don't. I mean,
and it's
masterful
in
to be
the
able to do that.
dialogue, in the visuals. They give the audience enough without it being too much. And like the art form of abstraction.
Yeah.
Like when you make like an abstract painting, the question always becomes, what is the most minimal I could do to describe a subject, a theme, a feeling? And that's where abstract painters will go back and forth with each other because they'll draw a line and then say like, what is the minimal thing I need to describe the feeling of betrayal?
Right.
And like, where can I put just a few lines and a few colors to give you betrayal?
Yeah.
And then, that's where they're using their artistry and their mastery of their tools. And in this film, that's what this is. It's saying like, how can I give you the bare essentials without it being
the bare human essentials?
Yeah, without it being exploitative.
Yeah.
Without it being like over romanticized.
This film could have easily done the typical, and the Brutalist kind of does that, the typical rich person dinner to establish the status of X person, like the white people that shoot the
angles,
guns.
the high angles, the close up, the shallow depth of field,
And what it did instead was, I'm gonna put this Mexican family in a field, a big field on a big property that we don't end up seeing till really later that night. And there's people shooting guns, and there's people dressed nicely. And then what makes us high class is that they start speaking English. It's these white people speaking English. And now we're like, oh, that's who they hang out with. Those are their friends. It puts you, it shows you where the family lives in society.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It shows you their societal element. But it didn't do it in a dinner table with a fancy china and
the big,
glass and silver. No, servants. It did it in an empty field with a language kind of barrier.
Yeah.
And before it got even like too into it at the hospital when she's about to give birth, when the grandmother is talking to the nurse, and the nurse is just like, "Oh, I just need some information."
I don't know.
And
she did such a great job
It was
there.
so minimal.
Yeah.
Before it was too much, because obviously you can accomplish a lot in that moment. It's like, oh, well, what's her name? Cleo. How old is she? Well, I don't know. Well, where is she from? I don't know. And then it's like, that's
The
okay.
disparage
Yeah,
of-
and it's like, that's okay. It's like, well, what's your relationship? I'm her employer. And the last question they ask before it cuts off from her is, that's okay. Is she insured?
Right.
And we don't get an answer for that. Yeah.
But we know But we know the answer.
We know enough.
Yeah.
You know?
To make our own judgment of that answer.
Yeah, we know enough to know that, like, part of the reason the grandmother's there and the reason she's crying is because she cares, but she knows that Cleo
She's
has
more.
nothing.
I think I took it as the grandmother's more in panic about what just fucking happened.
Yeah.
She just lived through something very traumatic.
Yeah.
You know, this, which I want to talk about really quickly. I don't spend too much time on this, and I have like a last kind of list of things I want to read before we close out. But I want to talk a little bit about what they're calling the Corpus Christi massacre.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you
Scene.
spent like 20 minutes trying to find out why.
What the fuck they called it that? But
Yeah.
Because we're in Mexico City. Like what?
I was a little familiar because when I first watched this film, I watched it with Sandra, and Sandra at the time was doing her master's in Latin American border studies.
Oh, okay.
So she was very well versed in the history of all of Latin America, specifically certain Mexican aspects.
She's the one to go to, yeah.
And when the scene came up of the college students rioting,
Well, I love that little
window pan.
inside from the window and just showing you enough
observational.
of the
Now,
chaos.
it doesn't set you in the
No,
riot.
it's
There's
just-
no. Yeah, I mean, it
just shows
does
you that
later
there's
when they walk
chaos.
out. But
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, this is the riot of this and that, and it was college students. And she knew as soon as they came up on screen.
Nice.
She's like, that's cool that he did that. Like, that's really cool. And then she's like, that's not what the film's about. And it isn't. But in so many ways it is. Like
And the connections
the
of it.
connections I make with Cleo and kind of
Yeah.
this worldly thing for it to happen. But the depiction of this, what happened was there was two major kind of massacres in Mexico City specifically,
60
that were semi-orchestrated by the government. 68 and 71. 68, it was basically college students protesting certain aspects of rights, and there was a lot of political change, and there was a new president and new political parties that were coming into play that were kind of controlling the education system. And it comes into play more in the 71 version, but the 68 version, they were doing protests, rowdy protests. So the government says, hey, let's all get together for a peaceful protest in the Zócalo. And if you don't know, you go to Mexico City, that's the town square, if you will. That's where they have, like, if you see on the news, that's where, like, a president will come out and make their, like in the Vatican, where the Pope will come out to their balcony. That's this version of Mexico. The president comes out and they talk to the people here. And then they fucking shot him. Hundreds of students just shot him. And I talked to Sandra. I was like, well, she's like, you know why? I was like, no. She's like, because they were causing such a ruckus that year it was Mexico's year to host the Olympics.
Oh, I did read that.
And instead of being like, we're not going to deal with this shit. It's the Olympics. It's going to make Mexico look bad. They already think low of us. We're just going to wipe them out. Fuck. So that there is no protest. There is no... And this all started because of two Chilean students that got arrested wrongfully. And that's what these guys were protesting. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to 71, where this film takes place. They organize another protest. This time, Mexico comes prepared. This time, Mexico gets a group of soldiers ready, trained by the CIA.
Holy shit.
The American CIA and military people.
That's like
And
going
they're
from 2
called,
to 8.
in English, they're called the Hawks, basically. El Holocanazo is what it's called. The event, they call it the Corpus Christi Massacre or the Holocanazo. And it just means hawk attack.
Hawk 2?
Hawk Tua.
You got a hawk.
You got a hawk Tua. It means like hawk attack. That word.
Hawk attack.
Holocanazo. Holocan is hawk and like attack. Like it's this grand event where hawks attack.
Huh.
These individuals were posed as college students. But they came with bamboo sticks.
Yeah.
And when the real college students were like, okay, dude, like we come prepared, they pulled out guns, rifles, high caliber rifles. And they killed 120 people, including a 14-year-old. And this caused such a row, obviously, but like Mexico kept trying to cover it up. And they were like, no. There was students fighting students, and they did this to themselves, and we weren't responsible. But they fucking trained.
Yeah.
And the police didn't get involved because they couldn't. They were told not to. This was a fragment of this film as a backdrop. But how important it is to Mexican history and to Cleo's character and her baby daddy and the type of person he really is.
Exactly.
Flips it on the script, and I imagine Netflix is like, you're gonna spend how many $1 million on. Cuaron practiced this thing for like months in a football field with 200 extras.
Dude, that was a lot of extras.
Like, we just saw a situation like that in the streets of El Paso where it was like maybe 100 extras.
Yeah.
We didn't get any rehearsals. Like, it was just like, girl, this dude wanted something very specific to kind of showcase this in Mexican history. But again, he wasn't pandering. He wasn't trying to make a historical accurate film. He was just trying to remember his memory of that, or
That's how I'm taking
not
it
even
now.
his memory of that. His nanny's memory of that she told him about probably. Well, we were at the department store and we looked out the windows and we could see a swarm of people.
'cause when you're a
And
kid,
we
like we're
walked
saying,
out
yeah.
and this was this memory. Again, it didn't shy away from the memory aspect of it all.
Yeah.
But it's such an impactful sequence in this film. You really need to see it. And you really need, this sequence needs to be studied as a masterclass of poetic and cohesive cinema and how to block a scene. And not just the rehearsal of looking out the window and seeing hundreds of extras. It's like this Ben-Hur situation where you turn back around into the department store and the real drama's happening. At least the drama we're invested in. We're not invested in these students. If you know nothing about Mexico's history, you don't give a shit. You don't know what's going on. You just know there's
'cause
protesting.
even
You're not invested.
yeah,
right?
even when I was watching it, like I had never heard of these riots and everything, but it was enough to be like, yeah. Then like kind of like her character, we don't know what's going on.
Right.
We just see a bunch of writing
Isn't
going
that
on.
fucking nuts, though? Even they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Because they're so invested in their own fucking lives.
Yeah.
You can justify Cleo a little bit. Cleo's not sitting around watching TV, looking at the news, and she can't. She's a worker. But these rich people aren't even in touch with reality. They don't know what's going on. So that it's such, when they come out to the real world and see what's happening in the real world in their own city, it's like, that's where the trauma came for the grandma, I think. I don't think it came. It came from a care for Cleo. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
For sure.
But Cleo's cattle. You don't even know her age. You don't know. You just know that she belongs to you. That's the only answer you gave to this hospital lady was she's my property.
Yeah, I'm
there
the
wasn't a she's born this date and these. Like I resent that a lot because again, when we took care of our Juve, it was like we had her birth certificates, we had her records from Mexico, we helped her. You know, like we would go to the hospital and say, "Here's her records. What else do you need from us to help this woman?" This lady didn't even know her age. Like but she just came out of this traumatic situation of the riot. I think that's where it stems from. I think it had very little to do with Cleo. I think it had a lot more to do because Cleo doesn't start becoming important. She was the dog shit cleaner. She didn't start becoming important until she saved the kids.
Yeah.
And even then, go make me a banana shake. Like
No, and it's so funny because in like again moments that could have been overexploited, overdone, and in the cinematography, it's so sterile, but it accomplishes everything. Is the beach scene when she's takes the kids, say, "Hey,
don't go past the edge."
don't like stay in the shallow part. Be careful."
Right.
And then even the mom, like, one last reminder, you can't go far because Cleo can't swim. And if she needs to save you, she can't, And then, Cleo, this guarding eye, she herself is healing from the stillborn baby and everything she's going through. But she's trying to, like, take care of these kids. And in a very, like, subtle moment, she just turns around, is walking, is trying to call them back, but...
knows it's getting out of control.
Yeah, knows it's getting out of control, but like, I don't know, what a strong figure to just walk in the water, bear the waves. No, I can't swim.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I also think it's a commentary on classism because there's no denying that she loves those kids, right? It's no denying that she has a heart for them.
This undying love, yeah.
But is it safe to say that someone in her position is also afraid to lose her job?
Yeah.
Like if they die.
Or something, right? I mean, I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm just saying that.
I mean, she's trying to survive.
Yeah.
No, but more than anything, it's kind of like
It's job security.
If I was to value my life over theirs right now, then yeah, you lose your job.
But you might die.
Yeah.
But think about it. These kids go in there, They're not gonna get in trouble if something happens to them.
Well, okay. What pissed me off is that why didn't you fucking yell?
She did.
Hey, get over here.
Well,
If you're really scared, you're like,
No,
hey.
but
Yeah.
you know
Hey.
what?
But that's the other part of the
she's-
classes system.
That's where I was trying to
Powerless.
see if they would say
Yeah.
something about that. I'm like, all right,
yeah.
is it-
Also,
is
like,
it
can
some-
she yell at them like that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought. I was like,
Because
is that-
I've also
why
had
not?
like people like when I was growing up where, you know, like
don't talk to my kids that way.
exactly. You don't talk to their kids that way.
even if you're trying to do something right? Like,
Yeah,
that's
like,
my
no,
kid.
like, because
the servant after all.
Exactly.
yeah, no, like with my parents, we had to take care of like my uncle and like my cousins for a little while, and like there was a point in time when like the kids were brats, and my parents, you know, were like, hey, they like snuck into my room and like took something and all that kind of stuff, and he'd be like, don't tell my kids like how
Don't
to
accuse
live,
my
like
kids,
like I'll teach them not to
Yeah,
do something,
yeah.
but don't go
Don't
raising
correct
my
my
kids.
kids, yeah.
So with her,
Fucking shit.
it's like you're just in charge of looking out for them. You're not in charge of correcting anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey,
No, yeah, I get it,
like
I get it.
even I think the only kind of like bartering chip she had is your mom said that if you go out, then we all have to leave.
Remember what she said. Remember what? Yeah, it wasn't
But-
like her instruction. It was like your mom said. Remember what your mom said.
But yeah, just
Yeah.
the fact that, you know, in this very
That is-
slow, sterile pen
Yeah.
We're-
Well, track.
or
That is-
track,
this-
yeah,
this-
tracking
this
shot,
scene, it is a track.
that we go out, we're seeing the waves crashing, and we're feeling every moment of her doing this duty of
Yeah.
saving the kids. And in a way, you know, like, sure, it's a fear of losing your job, but it's also the strength of this woman to
It is
persevere.
entirely. That's the
Yeah.
forefront situation that she has. She's brave for these kids in a moment where they need her. But I think there's something in
Oh
the back
yeah,
of her
for
head
sure.
where
There's a
it's like,
classism element to
oh
it.
no, like I'm, you know.
Yeah.
Let me talk
I
about the
can see that.
technical aspect of that a little bit because you mentioned, you know, this track. They had to build a pier to be able to shoot this. They had to build a pier into the ocean.
Like under the water, so they want to see.
No,
them,
like
or?
above
No,
the
no,
water
like a-
that like,
like a-
yeah, I know what
boardwalk,
appears.
right?
Yeah,
leveled with the beach.
Level with the beach.
that's what I'm saying.
And they send out they put these tracks, and it's a tracking shot. And Cuaron got 6 takes of this scene, 6 takes, and only one of them worked because the fucking track kept derailing.
Oh
So
shit!
that's the one you saw is the one they got. Like,
Wow.
And it worked.
look at it, it's right there.
Oh, that's nuts.
God damn.
Look at this thing, man. No bullshit.
You got to put that on the podcast.
This ain't reality TV.
This ain't
Yeah. No, when you watch that moment, it's so authentic, but like
Just
the rest of the
capture
film,
the-
because you see the kids, and I mean,
Because they could have gone with a waterproof rig, and we're gonna dive in there with Cleo. And
no,
we're gonna
we
go
could have
into
gotten
the action.
the close-ups of, you know, it looks like they're drowning, but really they're just in a shallow water, and the waves hitting them.
Again,
but no,
it's Cuaron saying, "I don't want to interfere with the past. I'm not trying to change it. I'm a ghost." Hearing
Oh.
at the distance the way Cleo hears from a distance, it's crazy.
no, and also like with a moment like that, because you know that the camera is so like ghostly, just kind of like sterilely looking at the past. In that moment, I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't,
me neither.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I have no
she
control.
saves them right now in this moment. I can't tell because of normal cinematic techniques. I can't tell if she's in a position of power.
Yeah, they're not
if she's
panning to see if we can
If
see the kids.
anything, I'm
Yeah.
getting a side profile of her calling out for the kids. I don't know even how far the kids are.
She left another kid back there. What's that
Yeah.
kid doing? I mean, we're here with her.
Yeah, no, and then
absolutely.
even like when we get deeper and deeper, where you can tell that like, oh no, she's not just pretending to get deeper in the water. It's like, oh
Yeah.
no, the water's genuinely like
Yeah.
up to
I
her
did
head.
there's no
observe that too.
bullshit. There's
I
no
Yeah,
observed that
no,
too.
and that was so powerful that when she finally comes back and there's like the poster shot, them all rejoicing together.
Yeah.
It's the strongest.
much. It's the
It's
bond.
the strongest unity.
Yeah.
All the mother really says is that we love you, Cleo. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, and all that kind of stuff. And then later on, the kids go and say like that she was the hero. But I mean, in such a simple, way.
Yeah.
Describe the heart of the story, the value of the family,
Absolutely.
the value of
her, yeah.
Cleo to this whole conversation
Again,
of a broken family.
neutralizing humanity.
Yeah.
This is humanity.
Oh, and you know what's crazy? I remember the kind of shock that, you know, I know that she's indigenous and darker skin tone, but the black and white really did wiped that away.
yeah.
That I never realized that when you put them next to each other, like when you look at the cast list, there's a stark difference.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and in that, it really does add to the whole.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, you look at all these little white kids, and you see her, and you're like, oh man, there is a difference.
Again, it's
and in color, that would have communicated something completely different, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the black and white format, I just felt the equality.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
absolutely. Well,
That's
or lack
good.
thereof, right? But without any special things to indicate that, just people.
Yeah. No, okay. I'll take that.
I want to read this before we kind of wrap it up because I know we're getting close to a good point. But
I gotta go pee.
I don't want anything from this film to kind of like get lost on us.
Yeah, you know that
Yeah.
for
For
sure.
the sake, so I'm gonna read this because I thought it was fascinating, and I think people out there will appreciate it. I think you guys will appreciate it.
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro was fucking a massive fan of this film.
Yeah.
In fact, Guillermo del Toro went on record, him and Chivo, to say Roma is one of their top 5 favorite films of all time. Just not like, oh, my buddy's favorite. No, of Cuarón's. No, my top 5 favorite films of all time.
Wow.
Del Toro and Lubeski. Del Toro,
It's in Austin's top like 15.
yeah. Del Toro
Oh,
wrote
nobody cares. Cool.
tweets.
Well, we're not gonna put it on Variety's magazine,
Yeah, bro.
but I care.
Del Toro wrote 10 tweets
10 tweets.
about this film.
How many tweets did you do?
in a
Austin?
row or what? Just like
Yeah, so
I
he
think
basically-
your mom did all.
He basically shared his
Fair enough.
10, he called them 10 personal musings about Roma.
Okay.
And I'm going to read them.
Yeah.
Bear with me. The first one is the opening shot suggests that Earth, the shit-infested ground, and heaven, the plane, are irreconcilably far, even if they are joined momentarily. And revealed by water, the reflection, all truths in Roma are revealed by water. We just talked about a scene revealed
Yeah.
by water. the beach scene, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't dawn on anybody that like that's the closing shot too. The plane is still so far away, despite how close it may look. Society flying in an airplane versus Cleo walking into her maid's quarters.
Oh, okay.
The kind of juxtaposition there, right? 2, these planes of existence, like the separation within classes in the household, cannot be broached. The moments the family comes closer are fleeting. She saved our lives is promptly followed by, can you make me a banana shake? 3, in my view, Cleo's silence is used as a tool for her dramatic arc. That leads to her most intimate pain being revealed by water. Again, after the ocean rescue, I didn't want her to be born. Cleo surpasses and holds her emotion in silence until they finally pour out. That's her arc. So when we see her most emotional is when she has the baby. Also revealed by water, her water breaks.
Yeah.
And that's her heightened emotion. And then finally she just can't suppress her emotion. It just pours out in this moment of life or death. 4, one key moment precisely crafted is Cuarón's choice to have Cleo's water break just as the violence explodes and her boyfriend breaks into the store holding both a gun and a Love Is t-shirt. The baby will be a stillborn. Gun, Love Is t-shirt.
I love it. I love that one.
5, in every sense, Roma is a fresco, a mural, not a portrait. Not only the way it is lensed, but the way it scrolls with long lateral dollies. The audiovisual information, context, social unrest, factions, and politics, and morals of the time exist within the frame to be read,
Yeah.
not viewed, read. 6, it seems to me that the fact that Cuarón and Eugenio Caballero built several blocks of Mexico City in a giant backlot, sidewalk, lampposts, stores, asphalted streets, etc., is not well known. This is a titanic achievement.
Yeah.
7, the class stratas are represented in the film not only in the family, but within the family, and the land-owning relatives, and even between Furman and Cleo when he insults her in the practice field. He calls her a gata.
A servant.
A servant, yeah, but dijo gata. Pinche gata.
Did you say gata?
Yeah.
Gata.
A servant.
Yeah.
Like, bro, what are you? Like, but classism, even with the classism, like, I have this conversation with a friend all the time that Mexican are the most racist people.
Yeah.
We are. Like, we will, like, make jokes or whatever, and, like, but it's not, like, hurt, or not trying to be hurtful, but more like a commentary, right?
Yeah.
Number 8, Roma ciphers much of its filmic storytelling through image and sound. When viewed in the theater, it has one of the most dynamic surround mixes, subtle but precise. Number 9, everything is cyclical. That's why Pepe remembers past lives in which he has belonged to different classes, different professions. Things come and go. Life, solidarity, love. In our loneliness, we can only embrace oh so briefly by the sea. That kid remembering, I was a pilot. I was a sailor that drowned.
Yeah, that was freaky.
That was class. Like, that's what he
Yeah.
remembers is his profession.
Yeah.
The final image, 10, the final one. The final image rhymes perfectly with the opening. Once again, earth and heaven. Only Cleo can transit between both. Like she demonstrates in the Zovek scene, only she has grace. We open the film looking down, we close looking up. But the sky, the plane, is always far away. That's it.
That's
all
poetic.
the Toro had to say
Wow.
about
That's
this
poetic about his film. Yeah.
Roma,
Oh,
ladies
that's
and
what about
gentlemen.
that guy,
Cinema.
Cinema. Do we have any rating changes?
So wait, really quick, who was Lebo?
Lebo was Cuaron's Cuaron's Cleo. His maid, his nanny.
Oh, okay.
Her name was Lebo.
Okay, I like that.
If you remember, Tu Mamá También, the lady that serves the sandwich to Tanok, that's Lebo, the actual Lebo.
When they're at the house, when they're at his
Yeah.
house.
The maid or whatever that's
Yeah, yeah,
serving
yeah,
the
yeah.
sandwich, that's the actual
I
Lebo.
love
Like,
stuff
that
like
was her?
that.
Yeah.
I
She
love
made a
stuff like
cameo there. She's made a cameo in a couple of other Cuaron's films. Not like the bigger ones, but like Solo con tu pareja. Just like bystanders and kind
I
of little
love
cameos.
Cuarón more after that.
But Lebo, the real Lebo, came out in Ni tu mamá también as herself, as the
That's
servant.
dope.
Wow.
That's dope.
And this film was entirely dedicated to her. And she did get to see it. In fact, I think she's still alive.
What you say?
I don't know. I didn't read anything about like her saying anything. I don't know.
Obviously she loved
but
it,
this film was very much dedicated to Lebo, to her.
I
Wow.
think my rating changed, and it's not just for being,
Incorrect.
No, I love that. No, man, I got a lot of insight and a lot of stuff that I just didn't see or notice, and it's not gonna go up too much, but I'll probably give it a 7.3.
Oh, okay.
To see now.
It passes.
Yeah, man, because man, a lot of things I just didn't interpret it like that, or I didn't see it like that, and it kind of makes sense.
I'll say this. I've had this weird battle recently, like when I watch films. I feel like before, and it happens a lot when you're like coming out of film school and they tell you that you really need to peer into cinema and like look for the subtleties, look for all the metaphors, look
I'm
for
learning that, man.
every single little piece of
Falling in
like
love with
every
that.
blade of grass that's there is intentional. So you need to like absorb it and try to interpret it. And there's a wonderful facet of when you watch films that you can look at every little piece and see it for the tapestry of like intentionality. But there's also a story, and I feel like now when I watch films, I try to view them in two ways. I try to view them as the film itself. What is the story? What is that?
Right.
And then respect that. I think a lot of directors will say at the very end, I'm making this film for you, and
yours.
whatever you do with it, that's okay. Whatever interpretations you get afterwards, that's okay. And I think the conversation's always like, I'm going to view it as a film. We're giving our ratings as what did this do in itself?
Cinematically.
But I
Exactly.
think all of these can be improved once you find the human element and the way that you connect with
Which
it.
is I just
Yeah.
Through this whole process, I definitely saw a lot more that I didn't.
And I feel like that's this. It's like maybe your rating right now, if it stays like that, that's okay.
Yeah.
But
No. I really like someone answered a couple questions.
yeah,
on that too.
and the more you look at it, the more you'll find things that make sense to you. You know, and like again,
That's how I went at it with this one. I was like, all right, let me see.
That was my screening.
for
this
us,
time
we
around,
have
for
an
sure.
interesting view because we're all Mexican Americans, and
We're all Mexican American filmmakers.
yeah. And because of that, we're going to have a deeper, richer connection with the subject matter. But it's also beautiful to see that you could probably take this film and show it, somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And they'll find something to connect with.
Yeah.
Similarly to the way that we connected with like the Apu trilogy,
Yeah.
something where we've never had a grandmother who lives out in the forest and all that kind of stuff. And, like that broken relationship between ourselves and our sister
Yeah.
and everything else.
Yeah.
But when we watch it, we're able to experience a life that wasn't our own. And
Yep.
that's the beauty of cinema.
That's the beauty of cinema.
of
It
this movie.
transports
Cinema.
you to worlds you wouldn't
Yeah.
otherwise known. I'm going to read one last thing before we close out. Thanks to Austin, who found this information. According to information about Alfonso Cuaron's film, Roma, Liboria Rodriguez, the real-life housekeeper who inspired the character of Cleo, said she was very touched by the film, often crying while watching it, and expressed a desire for the man who impregnated her character to see it, hoping it would impact him. She considered the film a tribute to her and her experience as a domestic worker in Mexico.
Oh man,
So
that's awesome,
she
bro.
did experience the film.
Wow.
Imagine as a filmmaker,
Yeah.
a movie that you did for somebody that you grew up with and taught you so much stuff,
You don't often get that chance.
and then you make them cry, have these emotions. Oh, bro.
I remember Spielberg,
Circle.
when he was making The Fablemans, would say like he was connecting with his sisters a lot for this film to ring true.
Yeah, to remember their parents.
But his parents would never see the film, They were long dead.
Yeah.
You don't often get that chance.
That
So
is
for
true.
Alfonso Cuarón to have gotten that chance, it's really special.
That is really, really special.
Roma, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I change my rating from like a 10 to an 11?
Sure.
No. I just say, it's a good watch. It's definitely a good
I
watch.
feel
was
like
just-
if you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
and like with all of our films, definitely
Then
go watch
How'd
it.
you make it this far?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get out
No,
of here, you little scamp.
Definitely go watch it.
for sure.
I think like with a lot of the films we talk about, especially during Oscar season, it's when they win these awards and like when they are able to have a spot on the Oscar pantheon.
It's warranted. This one's warranted. This one's actually warranted, not just campaigned. It's actually warranted, these wins and more. If you disagree, please tell us. Answer big hot topic in the comment section. Did Green Book deserve to win over
that's
Roma
the
for
big
Best
question.
Picture?
Oh yeah.
We don't think so. What do you think?
Yeah.
Did Green Book have something else to say?
But Roma walked so others can run.
But Roma walked so that films like Parasite could run. We call
Oh, yeah, that's what Austin
that was
said
my
for sure.
last year's pick
That
was
was a beautiful-
Parasite for
Yeah.
Best Director. Absolutely. So thank you, Cuaron, for being an inspiration that you are.
Absolutely, man.
Out of the three amigos, he's always been my favorite, man. I think Cuaron inspires me to
Yeah.
make grounded cinema the way he does.
I don't know. I like Steve Martin.
Oh, good.
Next week on our exploration of previous Oscar winners.
We will be exploring a Best Actor.
We'll be exploring. Do you want to say it?
Which one did I pick?
The Pianist.
Oh, yeah,
Pianist.
Adrian Brody, The Pianist. I think it was in 2004?
8.
I think it was 2004, 2006.
Yeah, I remember. I know the little backstory of his that he was going through struggles. He was doing commercials and stuff like
2002.
that. And this was his big breakout that got him.
Come join us to talk about this film. I mean, I heard a lot of people at the screening last night. The
I heard it too. What are you gonna say?
Brutalist. Well, the Brutalist. Number one, it makes me so happy because we talked about it during intermission.
Yeah.
It has an intermission.
Oh,
It's
that
in
is-
VistaVision and it has an intermission.
Bring back
that's
intermission.
Bring
pretty
back
unique.
intermissions. We were talking to somebody
gotta go
about
pee.
how they were like, we were talking about Brody, and we're like, yeah, of course he's phenomenal. And somebody was like, oh shit, that's right, it was Brody. It's Adrian Brody. Like,
He
it's
was
not
able to
Adrian
get
Brody.
lost.
Oh, I love that.
The Pianist does that to an extent, right? But we always know Adrian Brody as the Pianist, unless you know him for Wes Anderson films. But
Or King Kong.
or King Kong.
Or Predators.
Oh gosh, hey,
That was actually a good film. Come on.
our friend produced. Shout out to Elizabeth Avian. She produced Predators.
Predators? Yeah, dude, I like that film.
But yeah, we'll be talking about The Pianist in light of Adrian Brody actually being nominated this year again for Best Actor for The Brutalist. So that'd be a great bridge. I think it'd be great to talk
By
about.
the way,
sure.
I got to watch his Golden Globe speech.
Oh, so
earlier.
heartfelt.
For which
yeah,
one? For this one?
yeah.
For The Pianist?
No, for The Brutalist. He won for The Brutalist.
Yeah, he
shit,
won
okay.
for The Brutalist, and he part of his speech was talking about how he says recently he went through a moment where he says, I thought I would never have an opportunity to be on this stage again.
Yeah.
Like I just felt like genuinely like he loves everything he's done. He had I got to watch his talk with Jason Schwartzman.
With Jason Schwartzman, that's
and
good,
he
right?
talks
Yeah,
about how a lot of
A24
times
podcast.
yeah, like he's connected because of like Wes, and he keeps wanting to do those films and all that. But he had a very serious situation
Moment, yeah.
where he thought, I'm just never going to have that. And he felt like The Brutalist was an opportunity to find a voice again and be
it's
an
something
artist.
very personal to him because The Brutalist, and we'll talk more about this on the episode, he says he was emulating his grandfather.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was emulating his grandfather. He
migrant
listened
story.
to recordings of his grandfather
Nice.
telling his story of just this old tape recorder, and that's the voice. That's the voice he used. That's the demeanor he kind of was going after. Was his grandfather. So very personal to him too.
Yeah, you guys have to check it out. And
Yeah.
then-
So yeah, The Pianist next week. The week after that, we'll be doing our Oscar snub episode.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
We'll be talking about
Oscar snub / which one shouldn't get in.
Yeah, we were originally gonna do a cinematography pick just so we could have like directing, acting, and cinematography, but we thought that this year's snub was
Well,
For
I
editing.
did. I kind of campaign for
I
it.
gotta go pee, man. I really
for
gotta go
editing
pee.
for sure. I don't know. I mean, maybe on the acting side, I had a lot to say too. This director's a new, not new, but he definitely is one of the modern auteurs. Luca Guadagnino, who did Call Me by Your Name.
Oh.
He did Challengers, and he also did another film called Queer.
Oh yeah, this guy was like pretty pissed off that
I was gonna say,
challenges.
I campaigned for us. to
Yeah,
do
but
that.
Yeah.
Challengers was robbed of an editing nod. So we'll be talking about Challengers to wrap up our Oscars preview month.
Excuse.
And then we'll talk
Oscar.
about our 3-hour epic
Yeah.
episode. So thank you for tuning in for the first episode of the Oscar Winners Series.
Warm
Keep
up.
tuning in.
Warm up. And keep
Oscar
tuning in
warm-up.
for the rest of the episodes and let us know what you think, guys. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next week on the WatchTower Film Podcast. Good night.
Good night,
Good night, everybody.
I love you, everybody.
All right, Delal, do some naked kung fu for us.
The what?
Naked Kung Fu with C-Stand.
Oh shit, dude.
Jeez.
That's not what they did in the film.
What?
All right. Good night, everybody.